Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and yet again, welcome, cats, peeps, because we're hoping some of our friends are taking a peek at this chat as well. I'm joined again by my friend, Kat. Thanks for being here again, Kat.
Hey, Kelsi. How's it going?
Pretty good. We've been doing so much content in November. Man, November is like freaking hardcore for us.
I know, we're rocking it. That's for sure.
We really are. We're killing it.
We're killing it.
Yeah. As I always tell people, they should keep on killing it, but we're already killing it right now.
That's right.
I think.
I agree 100%.
All right. So speaking of all the things we've been doing in November and all the content we've been making, one of the things we literally just made was a part 1 to this very chat. So in today's chat, we're going to be talking about some movies that we watched as part of our Halloween movie marathon, which was a lot of fun. Now, we had a part 1, as I just said and referenced, and what we talked about in part 1 was All Hallows Eve, Halloween Town, Silver Bullet, People Under the Stairs, Monster Squad, The Halloween Tree, and Nightbreed. So I'm going to link that up here if you guys did not catch that chat. Very in-depth discussion, some really cool analysis. Very proud of that chat. So please check it out if you haven't seen it already. And I do want to add a little tidbit about All Hallows Eve that we did not talk about in our part 1 chat. So we did talk about the movie at length, but what I did not know is that there is a reason that Art the Clown looks different in the beginning of All Hallows Eve versus the rest of the movie. So if you had watched our part 1 chat, or if you haven't already, you'll hear us talk about how, the beginning of the movie, he has a fuller face. Art looks like a more friendly clown. He looks different. Well, the reason for that is that little short in the beginning of All Hallows Eve had already been filmed as a standalone short. So I have a feeling they literally just dropped it in. So I have a feeling they redesigned Art completely by the time that they started to put All Hallows Eve together. And so they already had this little story, this little video short that they just dumped in.
Oh, well, that's incredible. Well, that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
Like when they first did that short, they had an idea of what they wanted Art Clown to be all about. And then I guess they decided they could take him a step further and make him horrific.
Yeah,
because he was more human-like looking to me.
Yes, he didn't have the black teeth, right? In that one either.
No, he did not. He didn't start having the rotting teeth until we see him in the second part. And then the third one. And then what we see, even though it's a different actor, that image, the way he is with the rotten teeth and everything carries into Terrifier.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's a style of the way they did his makeup, and both versions of him in All Hallows Eve and then the version of him in Terrifier have the shallow cheeks, like the crazy cheekbones, but the first story within All Hallows Eve did not, and that's what explains it, is that maybe they just didn't fine-tune his design yet or something when they had done the earlier short. Then
also too, depending on what the time frame was between the two projects, they could have decided they may not have known that they were going to use Art the Clown again as a character in the future,
right? So
maybe when they decided, let's go ahead and do some other stuff with Art the Clown, let's make him worse than he already is.
Exactly. And I just wanted to give that little fun fact because I had no idea. I don't even know how I ended up looking it up, because we were already done with that chat and already done with talking about All Hallows Eve, but somehow I stumbled upon this little tidbit and I was like, I got to reveal it because we were wondering why did Art look so different? And there's the answer.
Yes, because it's a significant difference. For sure.
Yeah, it really is. I noticed that right away while watching. I'm like, that doesn't look anything like Art. Is that how it's going to be for the rest of the movie? So if you guys are not, haven't seen All Hallows Eve and you end up watching it after this, stick it through. If you don't think Art's that scary in the beginning, he looks different as the film goes on. All right. So that was my little addition, throwing back to last chat. But let's talk about the movies we're going to talk about today. So another thing we talked about in our chat last time was our biggest movie disappointments from our whole marathon. And one of the movies we referenced was Driller Killer. And we teased that we were going to talk about it in part 2, which is this chat now. So, yep, we're going to break it down. All right. So before we get into it, Kat, I'm going to give you the description of the movie and some ratings. So Driller Killer is from 1979. And basically the premise is an artist is driven to insanity while struggling to pay his bills, work on his paintings, and look after his female roommates. He takes to the New York streets at night and kills homeless people at random with his drill. So basically, he's driven to do this because, I don't know, the pressure of everyday life. The ratings, 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb, 64% on Rotten Tomatoes, 66% on Metacritic, and 77% of Google users liked it. So that means it's pretty decently liked. That's surprising to me.
It is extremely surprising to me.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, should we spoil like our rankings? We just recently did an anniversary chat celebrating Kat and I's 1-year anniversary of making content together. And in that chat, we basically took all of our movies and made a top 25 favorite list and a bottom 5 least favorite list of all the movies we watched over 12 months. And I gotta say, I don't know if I should spoil it, but Driller Killer made one of our bottom lists.
That's all you should say. Who do you think it would be?
Who and what number did it fall at, basically. All right, so let's get into it a bit. I'm gonna go with you. I personally think it has a little bit of merit, but we're gonna wait and I'll talk about my reasoning, but what do you think?
Okay, well, I basically am gonna just say I hated the film.
I know.
It's pretty much the worst film that was a part of this marathon. I mean, I don't want to say that I regret watching it. I mean, I don't want to ever say that just because I would never know if I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. One of my biggest complaints about the movie, I think, is that it took forever to get to the first kill. I was like, this is called Driller Killer, and he's killing me with boredom, basically, at this point, because nothing was happening for the longest time. I want to say it was like 30 or 40 minutes. And I'm like, geez, when is he going to go out and do something, really profound? But I don't know. It had a story, but it just drug on. He had some kills, but and some of them were good. They were okay, but I don't know. It didn't hold my interest for sure. And it was kind of groovy in some ways. And I guess that's because it's dated, being 1979. But I did find out some interesting things about it. But I must say, pretty much the only thing that I thought was really great in the movie was the punk band that played, which was this make-believe group called Tony Coca-Cola and the Roosters.
Oh, well, his name was great, that's for sure.
Anyway, that's what I'm saying is the best thing about the whole thing was the band. And they weren't the greatest band to begin with, but It was pretty hilarious. But anyway, some tidbits that I found out, doing a little deep dive, is that the director is Abel Ferrara. He also is the actor who played Reno Miller in the film. He's the director? Is the actor. Okay, so the director is Driller Killer. However, when you look up the credits in the name, he goes by Jimmy Lane. So if you looked at credits, you're not going to see Abel Ferrara down as Reno Miller. You're going to see Jimmy Lane. Apparently, when he acts, he uses that name. I don't know if every time, but that was something I found out. Now, believe it or not, I was really surprised by this information. Abel Ferrara is a pretty well-known director and is, I don't know if I should say acclaimed, but he's kind of a popular director. He's known for provocative and often very controversial content in his movies. He's worked with many celebrities over his career, and you're going to be surprised by some of these names: Melanie Griffith, Billy D. Williams,
wow,
Christopher Walken, Lawrence Fishburne, Harvey Keitel, and Madonna. What? That's just to name a few. I know, I was shocked by this. Okay, totally shocked.
So do you know the films, any of the other films you did, or was it music videos or?
No, it's actual films. Now, some of the films I didn't recognize the names of. One of them was Bad Lieutenant, but it's not the Bad Lieutenant. I think there's one of similar name with Nick Cage. This one is with Harvey Keitel, and it looks, based on the poster, it almost looks like it's like a porn movie, but I'm not sure if it is or not.
Oh, gosh.
I know, just the way the poster looked, I was like, I don't know about this one. And then there was another one that kind of looked familiar to me, but the poster, but I had never seen it. I didn't write down all the movies that these people were in, just because of time constraints. But yeah, if you want to look up his directing credits, I think you'll be pretty shocked at, some of the ones that he's done, because I may have to even look up the one that I'm thinking of. I don't know if you would have heard of it.
Well, it blows me away that he was the guy who played Reno.
Yes, he's the guy. Wow. Because what happened was, when I was looking it up, I saw the picture of him as an older man, and I'm like, he kind of looks like the actor. Well, then when I did more information, that's when I realized, was researching more. That's when I found out it was him. The movie I'm talking about that looks familiar, I've heard of this one. It's called King of New York. And that's the one that has Christopher Walken in it. So I'm not sure if you've heard of that movie or not, but that, out of all of the movies that he has done, that's the only one that I recognized. Wow. As a title. But I was pretty blown away by, because there are other actors he's worked with that are well-known celebrities. And it may be earlier in their careers, obviously he might have given some of these people their start. But I mean, this to me was like a super ultra low budget film.
Oh yeah, low budget is the perfect description for this.
Yeah,
yes.
Super low budget. But what I think is hilarious is, this is the fun fact that I found a couple of fun facts, but this is one fun fact. Driller Killer was also the name of a Swedish crust punk black metal band. And you heard me right, Swedish crust punk. Okay, apparently there's all these different types of punk rock bands, okay? It was formed in 1993, and they chose the name because of this film.
Really?
Yes.
That's
and they were
so
active. They were active from 1993 to 2009.
Wow. Okay.
So then I was like intrigued, because I'm like, what is a crust punk band? Because I've never heard of that. It just, what does that mean when you think of crust, crusty? Like, if you think of something being crusty, what do you think? So anyway, I went a little deep dive on that. So my information comes from Punk Wiki, which is part of a punkfandom.com. And apparently it is heavier and dirtier form of punk rock.
Oh.
Its cultural origins are early 80s in England. It's derived from anarcho-punk, which promotes anarchism, like anarchy.
Yeah, like anarchy. Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's a subgenre, and it's usually dark with metallic guitar riffs.
Oh, this is so funny. So when you said crust, I'm like, well, he eats a pizza in the movie.
Well, at first I'm thinking, is it something to do with that? Then I'm starting to think like the Krusty Krab and SpongeBob, I'm just trying to think, is it because it's like a hard exterior? I mean, what is it about? But that is truly
a darker form of punk, essentially.
Yes,
heavier even.
Yes, heavier. And, like I said, it's derived from this anarchism type form of punk. So I just thought that was pretty interesting, because like I said, to me, the best part was this fake band called Tony Coca-Cola and the Roosters.
Well, you are going to laugh at my notes then. I can't wait to read you my stream of consciousness notes. Go ahead.
Well, and I have to say, between the band, and I will give props to the ending of the film.
Yeah, that was
I
cool.
will give props, and I can't tell you how it ends, but I will give props to it, because I didn't see it coming, and I thought it did. I was just like, holy crap. Like, I can just envision what is going to happen next.
Yeah.
It's too much.
I do think the ending, like, like kind of leaves you with like, you know, a feeling of eeriness, like what the hell is
Yes.
going to happen next. It kind of leaves you on the edge of your seat and you're like, man, I kind of want that a little bit more, but
Well, and I kind of like, it's the kind of thing, like if we were going to talk about Driller Killer with spoils, with spoilers, obviously I can't speak, then I think you and I could analyze what we think would happen at the end.
Yeah.
And our reasons why, because I do think there is foreshadowing that leads to it, you know, so it just depends. I mean, it's the kind of ending that you kind of get to decide what you want to do with it, you know, so for me, I think the ending is semi-satisfying because, you know, at least it ended on a high note.
I agree. I do think that was a very high note in terms of comparing it to the rest of the movie for sure. And it's just like, you know, it kind of gets your blood pressure up a little bit at the end there. I think that was the creepiest part of the movie, and the scariest part of the movie was the very end.
Yes, I agree.
And like you said, it did take a little while to get going, but I will say, so I just want to compare this with Rotten Tail. I'm not saying this is a great film on its own, but I want to argue why it's better than Rotten Tail. And there's no way that Rotten Tail is better than this. No way. And this is my arguments. I'm going to read my notes I took while I was watching the movie. Like, so these are stream of consciousness, actual notes. I'm watching, I'm taking notes. And I will say, at parts, my attention was waning. So I agree with you on that. You know, I found myself kind of wondering how much longer. I mean, that's not a good thing to think during a film at all. So I will admit that. And I'll also admit, of course, it's super low budget, as we discussed earlier. And there are a lot of flaws. But let me just, like, the flaws are represented a lot. But it's better than Rotten Tail, and we'll get to why after I go through my notes. So the notes has the flaws, it has the pros, and it has just funny observations. So here we go. Driller Killer. My first observation, cool techno, organy music. I like that right away. So already I'm kind of liking the weird music. And another thing, I didn't write this down, but I think it was a really good depiction of old school New York. Really grimy. Like, it really felt like these people were not acting, that they lived in New York, that they were struggling artists. And the funny thing is, it probably, in a way, knowing that the director is also the lead actor, it probably is kind of mirroring his life because he is an artist. So, you know, the struggles that go with that, obviously he knew how to represent those because he's a director and actor, and probably had to struggle to get to where he was. All right, so I like the look of the main character because he looked disturbing. Like, just the look of him was so unique. It was like a weird looking Rolling Stones guy. What's his name?
Oh, Mick Jagger?
Yeah, but like with poofier hair. I don't know. He looked like a very like creepy Mick Jagger. I don't know. I liked the look of him. I thought he was like a unique guy because I knew he was going to be the one to lose it. I mean, if you read the IMDb description or the Google description, you know right away it's about the guy who's an artist who's living with these two girls and he loses it. So you know he's the one who's going to lose it. So right away I was like, this dude's acting funny. Like, he's in the church, he's confronted by this old guy, and like they're like, is he related to you? He's like, he's not related to me. And he's all freaked out by this guy, like knowing his name, and like, you know, anyway, that's a whole big confusing part in the beginning. More of my notes say, I like the creepy scenes in the church. Also, random that the couple starts heavily making out in the taxi. Weird. Like, they're literally like going all out in the taxi. But again, I guess this is so 70s. Like, it might have been okay back then. I don't know. I would never think that this would go on today in the middle, like, you know, of a taxi ride, but maybe it does. I don't know. I just thought it was a weird place to make out at. Can't you just wait till you get home? Like come on. You're almost
Get
there.
Get a room.
Yeah, literally. Get a room. All right. So the whole film has a punk rock feel, is what I put. And that was before we saw the band. That was before, like, the music kind of took a turn into a different direction. But I literally just thought it was really grimy, and I don't know.
Right.
There's a close-up of the main character drilling a hole in a door, and this is before he ends up using a drill as a weapon. It's just like when nothing's happening, the first like 30 to 40 minutes of exposition, he ends up drilling a hole in the door. I said, dude drills a messy hole because it's literally like the worst drilled hole ever. I would not ask this guy to come hang up pictures at my house. Get out of here. And yet he's still able later to go kill people with the drill. So I guess he's better at that. At least he's good at using the drill in one way, shape, or form. He's not good to drill a hole in the wall. No, he's bad at it.
Not in the way that it's intended to be used.
No. He's only good with a drill when it comes to like unique adaptations of using the tool. Otherwise, no. You're gonna have to get a new hobby, and I'm glad he's a better painter than he is a driller. Anyway, let's go. It's so dumb. All right, so like I said, there's a mix of types of music for the soundtrack. Like sometimes it was like techno-y, then you literally have punk rock music coming in later with an actual band. I did think it was cool that they kept showing creepy close-ups of the buffalo's eye.
Yeah.
Like, so there's this buffalo painting that he is working on, is big part of the story. I think that's one of the reasons why he's going mad. I'd go mad if I had to look at that thing every day. It was off-putting, and they kept like zooming into the buffalo's eye, which was really well done. If they did commission someone to paint that for the movie, the artist actually did a really good job at capturing like the essence of a buffalo. I don't know. You know how I feel about eyes, so the creepy eye, that gets to me.
It's trying to tell you that art is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. That's definitely true with horror movies, and it's definitely true, I guess, like with his art and yada yada. That's a good comparison. All right. So I thought a really good and gross part of the movie that was actually well executed was that skinned rabbit.
Oh, yes.
Like kind of like, unsettles you. And so already right away, I'm like, oh, this is something, whatever. So more notes. The blood looks so fake. It's great. It's exactly what I wrote. The blood looks so fake. It's great. You know how I like corn. So that already I'm like, yeah. I like when the main character is literally talking to the painting of the buffalo. He's literally like having a conversation with the buffalo. And I'm like, this is absurd. He is obviously losing his grip with reality. The lead singer of the band is also insane, I wrote. And then I said I'd go insane like Reno too if I heard that terrible band playing all the time.
That is one of the things that prompts him to become driller killer.
Yeah, he can't take the music.
Because he can't, he's already under this great deal of stress because he's on the verge of being evicted from his apartment. And he's all of his, everything that he's relying on is this buffalo picture that's, painting that's been commissioned, and he's banking on this is going to help him get out of the hole because apparently he is a well-known artist and he's sold paintings before, because he gets criticized that, it's not like his good stuff that he's painted before, but he's under the stress. He can't pay his bills. He can't pay his rent. His girlfriend's having to bail him out, which isn't really great, for
and it's
a woman
not great for
at
their
that
relationship
time,
either.
Right. And at that time for the woman to be, paying the bills.
Well, to be fair, I think she was just getting the money from her ex-husband or her estranged husband, which is kind of like not cool. Like, so she's like getting all this money from him and she's like, thanks, ex-husband. And she's giving it right to the new boyfriend.
Right. Which is bizarre also,
it is.
But so he's got all this stress going on, and then it's causing him it's causing him to have painter's block instead of writer's block, and because of this, then he's got to deal with this punk rock music. So it's basically causing him to go insane, which is pretty understandable if you're that stressed, out.
I just think it's funny that you were like, the best part's the band. And I was like, I'd go insane if I heard that band every day too. I was just like, enough with the band, like rehearsing the same songs over and over. It was all, I think
what the thing that was bad about the band, and it's not the band's fault so much as it's just showing, how he tips over, I think, goes and falls off the edge eventually, is that they just played all hours of the night.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they only played at certain times, but it was all the time, and they had people in and out and all that kind of stuff. So,
very grungy situation like that was going on in this apartment building. And the apartment guy was not bothered by having this band in his complex. He was like, whatever, it doesn't bother me. And Reno's even being like, come on, they keep like playing, I can't work.
Yeah, but really, I mean, the landlord wasn't very sympathetic to him because at least the band could pay their bills. So
That's probably why he was like, I don't care, at least they're paying. Yeah, exactly. Because Reno couldn't pay, so he wasn't going to be sympathetic to Reno. All right, so more notes. I'm almost done. I love how he runs around the city streets with his drill. So the drill is portable. He gets like a little belt that's able to power the drill. I thought that was such a unique weapon. When we talk about like, weapons in horror movies, I think this is one of the more unique ones. And so I liked that. And I thought it was hilarious when he's like literally running, like the way he runs is so hilarious. It's so weird of a run. It reminds me of Barry from the Goldbergs who runs without moving his arms. It kind of reminded me of just like a very silly run. I liked the run. So I thought one of the worst parts of the movie, or in terms of like the most grating parts of the movie, was this crazy bum was like, just acting up when these normal guys were waiting for the bus. And you could see the guys waiting for the bus look so uncomfortable. And I was like, oh my God, that's so realistic. Because when you go up north and like you're about to take the subway, there are all these people sometimes who are like talking out loud and like doing weird things. Obviously people with problems, and I have sympathy for them, but like you do kind of get scared sometimes that like they're like, especially when they're like yelling at the top of their lungs right next to you, you're afraid that they're going to do something because they're kind of being antagonistic right by you. And so that's what was happening in this scene. Was this like bum guy was like laughing in their faces and like, peeking out behind them and like almost like antagonizing the two guys waiting for the bus. But the best part was when that guy got it. I was like, yes, I wanted that guy to get it because he was so obnoxious and scary. And the dudes were relieved when they got on the bus, and the dude didn't get on with them. But yeah, I liked when he got it. So I said, wow, he kills so many homeless guys like in one night, and the girlfriend doesn't even notice he's gone from the club. He's just running around being like, I don't know. And she's like, where is he? It's just ridiculous. Also, at one point, he opens up the fridge and there's like a half drunk beer. He drinks the rest of it. It's empty, and he puts it back in the fridge. What the hell, Reno? Just throw it away. Why are you putting an empty can back in the fridge? That's just a funny observation. I don't know why you did that. Also, the most horrific part in the movie has nothing to do with killing. It has to do with pizza. As you know, Kat, I warned you about this before you even watched it. I said, so look out for the pizza. It's gross and it's worse than any kill in the movie. So there's this freaking pepper-filled pizza, and he eats it so fast and messily, and it's like sloppy pizza too. It's not like, I don't know, it's like,
and it's just the way he eats it too. I mean,
it's two things. It looks gross to begin with, but then when he starts eating it, he's like, and like no one around him is saying anything until the very end, where the girlfriend can't take it anymore. And she's like, you're so disgusting. And like, she throws a pizza at him, and then he walks away, or she walks away. Someone walks away and she says, I hate you. So she's basically had enough at this point with this pizza situation. Killing people with drills is fine, but not eating pizza in a gross way. No, she doesn't know about the drilling though. I'm just joking, but
yeah, that's true. She doesn't know about that yet.
But yeah, she's already had enough. The pizza is enough to send her over the edge, and things escalate from there. And then my last note is the ending, and I underlined twice the ending because that was the best part of the movie. So to recap all my notes, what does all this mean? It means it's better than Rotten Tail, because when you ask me how I feel about Rotten Tail, could I have taken any of these notes in a positive way? No, I did not really laugh, but maybe a half of a time at the pellets thing. Like a guy crapping some rabbit pellets. Like that was a little funny. Other than that, I just thought it was so try hard, where this was like, it was artistic-ish. The shots were pretty cool in some aspects. I thought there was more that you could appreciate in an artistic way of this movie. Yes, it might fail in some areas, but was it as trashy and worthless as Rotten Tail? No. I mean, to me, like, Rotten Tail has no redeeming qualities. I did not like the story. This one had a really good ending. Rotten Tail did not. Like,
Rotten Tail didn't really. Rotten Tail was all over the place. I mean, I give it that, but it was so absurd. This did have a story, so I have to concede and say that, but I don't know. So
do you really think that this is worse than Rotten Tail? Is that your final conclusion for now? I'm just kidding. You don't have to change your opinion. I'm just saying,
I'm not changing my opinion because I really did not like it.
I just thought, like, when you had texted me like this is worse than Rotten Tail, I could not believe it, because yes, this is bad. I'm not trying to say this is the best movie ever or I super enjoyed it. it is in my bottom part of my marathon. But like when I compare it specifically to Rotten Tail, I was like, well, I feel like one has more merits than the other.
Well, you know what I think it is. What I think it is that I didn't so much have disgust with the character who becomes Rotten Tail quite as much as this guy in Driller Killer just disgusted me. Like I didn't
really.
He was just to me like gross, like just somebody. I just didn't like his character.
Maybe
I didn't like his character
really
on
trashy.
many levels. He was trashy. He was a user, abuser, kind of whiny at times.
He was kind of ugly to his girlfriend by the things he was saying to her.
And that, and then also his treatment of the other girl, which that whole thing with the whole threesome and the two girls, and
that was so
like,
weird. So like the two girls are like messing around, and like he doesn't even know about it. Like what is going on?
I don't know. The whole thing. It wasn't.
To me, though, it felt like 70s. Like it was a real depiction. Like I didn't like him either. And he did disgust me as well. I do agree with you on that. But I would say Rotten Tail disgusted me more just because he was so raunchy. And like I didn't find the raunchiness very funny. I don't know. To me,
it's true. I didn't find the raunchiness funny. I think Rotten Tail to me was just absurd, but it was absurd and over the top. And you pretty much got that in the first couple of minutes of the film. Like, well,
more did happen quicker.
Yes. And you knew that there was really not going to be any redeeming qualities. And it just got to the point that it was so ridiculous that, like, it's just amazing that it was actually a film, whatever. Yeah. But this was, I don't know how to explain it. It's, Rotten Tail was disgusting in the raunch factor, I guess. This was just, he was disgusting as a person.
Right. More like despicable in a way as well.
Yes. And then like, it's like, just as, I don't know. It's almost like, even though he was not, I think he thought he was more than what he really was.
Yeah.
And that he had a sense of entitlement, like he lives in this apartment, but he thinks he should have all, a quiet place, and he should trump the band playing at all hours of the night. I mean, I do think it's rude that the band played all hours of the night, don't get me wrong, but here it is, he can't even pay his bills, and then it's just, it's sort of like, well, I'm an artist and I'm allowed to be emotional and all this kind of stuff. It's just, to me, it's just the difference of Rotten Tail was just, it was trying to be a monster movie that was kind of a little over the top.
Yeah.
This, I don't know. They're different categories.
They are. I guess because Rotten Tail knew what it was doing. Like it knew it wanted to try hard and be over the top. That was the whole goal of it, was to be over the top.
Yes, I really do think that was their intention. I don't think they were trying to make a really great artsy.
Where this one, it's trying to make an artsy movie, but to you it fails. And so that way it kind of makes it worse to you.
It does. And then also too, like I said, it took forever for him to do something. So I think at that point I was already like you said, when is this going to end? Because nothing's really going on and I could be watching something else at this time. Yeah. Whereas Rotten Tail pretty much, the action starts happening. It's not actually action that I want my eyes to see, and after I watched it, I felt like I needed to have an eye cleanse, yes. Because it is super raunchy, but I think it's different. They're different.
They are different.
You can't really compare them apples and oranges, if I could almost say I could probably tie them, if I had two different categories, like for an award for most raunchy and one for just really terrible.
I could see that. That makes sense to me. Like totally makes sense. But I will say, like, I'm not trying to argue the merits of it. Like, it's a good movie, because I actually think it was a pretty bad movie, because one of the things that hindered it was that things took so long to start happening. However, when the drilling took place on the streets, I did laugh at parts. I liked it. I was like, this is so absurd. This is so dumb. And it looks so fake. But there was a cool kill where he started to drill into somebody's head without them even like realizing what was going on.
Right, which I thought that was like
out.
crazy, you know, and then they are awakened by this.
Yeah. So I thought that was neat. So there was like my whole point is that I thought there was a few redeeming qualities that for me made it better than Rotten Tail. But I could totally see that makes sense with the different categories. One is raunchy, one is just terrible. So that makes sense to me. Your thinking on that.
That's why I can really make a good decision between Rotten Tail and Tales from the Hood, not Tales from the Hood, Leprechaun in the Hood.
Yeah.
Is because in my opinion, they're on the same wavelength. But like, I never thought anything could be worse than Leprechaun in the Hood. And then along comes Rotten Tail. Here comes, Rotten Tail, and it knocks Leprechaun in the Hood
something
out.
His boners up. I don't know.
Right, something. But I mean, so in that sense, like if I had to compare the two of them, I would know exactly who would be on the bottom of the list of that. Yeah. Believe me, Rotten Tail was at the bottom of the list for a long time.
Yes.
So anyway,
I just think it's a fun conversation. I mean, I do wish I had my time back. I didn't love the movie in any sense of the word.
That is true.
It's always a fun conversation though. Once we're done, I'm like, well, actually, if we didn't have these movies, we wouldn't have as fun of discussions in terms of like really crazy movies and analyzing them and trying to make sense of them in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's valuable in that way. But if you're just looking to watch movies and you're not going to review them like me and Kat, then I wouldn't advise watching it. But if you love like really cheesy, perhaps like kind of badly made movies, you might actually like it. There might be some like things you enjoy, like the drilling and the weird running. Whoa, like I can't even do it. I can't even explain it. Like I'm exaggerating it, but it was a weird run. Let's just say that. It was a weird run. Well, that's my final thoughts on Driller Killer. I guess tread lightly if you're thinking about watching it. I don't know. Any final thoughts on that?
No.
You're just happy to be moving
Let's move on.
All right. So next up is 1922. And this was not released in 1922. It was released in 2017. And this is an adaptation actually from a short story that Stephen King wrote. And it's in one of our books that we both read. It was my very first read of 2021.
Yes. Yeah. So I read it in 2020. And when I read it, I was like, I know what I'm going to get for Kelsi because I think she'll love it. Every story in that collection is phenomenal. Sometimes you get a collection of stories and they might be good, but you have your favorites. This one, all four of them were, I thought, outstanding. I enjoyed all of them. And 3 of them have been made into films.
Yep.
So I just think that's pretty cool too. So.
And 1922 was one of the stories, and it is the one of the ones, as we're talking about the movie right now, that was adapted into a film. And let's see what the description is. It's a farmer conspires to murder his wife for monetary gain and convinces his teen son to participate. The ratings, a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, 3.5 out of 5 on IndieWire, and 73% of Google users liked it. And I loved the short story. But for me personally, I'm just going to kick off my thoughts. I know you disagree, but I felt like it was so slow. And I felt like they could have condensed the running time. Now, it was very faithful, but I don't know why it worked better for me in a story versus like on the screen. On the screen, I just thought there was so much time passing, and I was like, oh, they can condense this a little bit. When it got to certain parts, I really liked it, but they also changed a really integral part of the story as well in the movie, and that bothered me too. To me, that changed a lot about the meaning of the whole story, what they ended up changing. And I don't want to give it away. You'd have to watch it to see what I'm talking about. But I had problems with this one. It was not my favorite at all, although I loved the short story, ironically. What did you think, Kat?
Well, I actually liked it, and the pacing really didn't bother me so much, just because I knew a bunch of it had to do with the fact that it was more of what this man was experiencing, because it was like the consequences of what he has done, basically. It's a story that's told to us, both in the book and in the movie, in flashback. It's been compared to The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe,
I could
where
see that.
your protagonist is telling his story, similar to how Wilfred is telling the story. Wilfred is the protagonist of 1922. Both are plagued with guilt and haunted by their sins, and it's basically the ghosts of those they have wronged is causing them to go insane,
Right.
So when you think of the breakdown of somebody, and I think that's where the slow pacing for me worked, because it's something that takes time. It's not like you're going to just go insane immediately.
Right.
It is not based on a true story, but it was actually inspired by real events. I don't know if you knew this.
I think I might have
was
heard
inspired by one or more real life crimes. And that's how this story, kind of developed, which I got a sense that it almost seemed like something that could have happened in real life. When you think about the things that happened with Wilfred, and you think about things that happened with his son, later in the movie. But I loved how Wilfred's greed and his growing dislike for his wife leads him to commit this terrible crime, or if you want to call it his sin. And it ultimately destroys his family and himself. And the ironic part is the things he was fearful of losing because she wouldn't agree with him is what ends up actually happening in the end.
Right.
He
loses it anyway.
And it's like, life could have been a little bit different. And how would he have known that life couldn't have been better if his wife would have been able to do what she wanted to do? But he didn't want to give a chance because he was stubborn. And I think his dislike for her, it's pretty much implied that they got together because she got pregnant before they got married.
Right.
And so the fact of the matter is they liked each other maybe for that moment and in the throes of passion or whatever the case may be. But back then you married, to make things right. And so that there wasn't any kind of scandal, but she may not, or even she might not have really wanted to marry him, and he may not have really wanted to marry her. But I think it was just a growing dislike over time. The only thing that they had in common and kept them together was their son.
Right.
Basically. I mean, I enjoyed it. It also, the pacing reminds me, felt like almost like what that time period would be like in 1922. Things were not fast. You didn't have television to keep you occupied. You didn't have fast-paced activities. Their life was on a farm. So it's pretty much, dictated by that. So that's why I was okay with, with the pacing in that. But I also wanted to let you know that they were on a very limited budget. And so some of the scenes that they wanted to do, pretty much like with all the rats, and some of the scenes that were a little more eerie in the book that were related about how she comes about with the rats and everything, they were so limited with budget that they couldn't do that.
Really?
But they were fortunate that Molly Parker played the part of the wife, and she kind of had that creepy mood and did a really fine job of trying to make it scary and ghastly and ghostly and all that kind of stuff. So the limited budget, I think, had something to do with that. And I found that information out in an article on DiabloEek magazine.com. in June 24th, 2021. It was called Director Zach Hilditch Talks About His Stephen King Adaptation 1922, because this director has been a fan of Stephen King ever since he was like 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so to him, it was like a dream come true to be able to direct a film, of an author that he really loved. He became a fan after reading It. He actually saw the Tim Curry version of It, loved it, went and read the book It. Now, mind you, he's 11 years old and got hooked from that point on.
Right.
And so he just was very excited about being able to do this film. He describes the film as a very slow burning psychological horror film.
It is a slow burn for sure.
It is a slow burn. And he said that Stephen King was actually pleased with how it turned out. Now, they didn't actually talk, but he knows that Stephen King has said it in interviews and his, it's out there that he was pleased with how he adapted it.
Just to add to that, that magazine I gave you, the Stephen King magazine, in that they rank like the best adaptations of King's works, and 1922 was really high on their list of like one of the best adaptations. And so lots of people like it. As you heard when I read the ratings, I mean, it's pretty liked. But me, I don't know what it was for me. I mean, maybe it's because I read the story the same year, and so it was kind of still really fresh, so it's like I knew everything that was going to happen, and maybe that made it even feel slower than it already was. But I agree with a lot of the observations you made about why it should be slow and how it's more psychological and that it is a slow burn. Like, how you thought session 9 was so slow, and we're going to get there in a second when we talk about session 9. You thought it was boring and so slow. To me, I felt like 1922 was so slow, and I was like, to where I thought it didn't have as much atmosphere as session 9. I thought session 9, the setting added, and it helped with the slowness. It helped you get through the slowness when it comes to me, at least. Right. Whereas 1922, another thing that made it difficult for me to enjoy was I thought the actor did a great job, the actor who played Wilfred, but at the same time, I agree with them trying to go for an old type of accent. However, it was so heavy of an accent that it was really hard to understand sometimes. Yeah, so sometimes I was like, what is he saying? It was like mumbly and like very
it's almost like he was eating his words.
Yes. And so that kind of really hurt it for me too. It's just like, what did he just say? You know what I mean? And that's a pet peeve of mine, because we've talked about it in previous chats, where if there's whispering going on in a movie and they're actually whispering and you can't hear and you have to put on subtitles, but it's an English speaking movie. Right. And I'm like, what the hell? I shouldn't have to do this with an English speaking movie. I don't mind subtitles for foreign films, because sometimes there's some great foreign films and I don't mind reading them. But like when it comes to an English one, it's just because the actor is like speaking in a way you can't understand. That kind of bothers me a bit. Right. So I think that was part of it.
I could see that. I do have a fun fact. I don't know if you realize this, but Thomas Jane, who portrays Wilfred in the film, has starred in 2 other Stephen King adaptations.
I didn't realize that.
He was in the movie Dreamcatcher, and he was also in The Mist.
Oh, I've not seen those 2 in forever. So I'd have to rewatch to,
well, Dreamcatcher. I'm telling you, I cannot talk tonight for sure.
It's been a long week for you.
Tongue twisted. Dreamcatcher is a novel. The Mist is a short story, but he actually starred in both of them, and I did not realize that because he looks so different to me than he did in either of the films.
It's just been years since I saw either, so I would have never known or realized that unless I would have watched them coming up in our Year of King. I don't know if those are going to be a part of it or not, but if I rewatch either of those, then maybe I'll recognize him.
Right, but I know we won't be rewatching 1922.
No.
Because we've already read the story.
Yes, and we've already watched it now, so we don't need to watch it again. It's so fresh.
I think it is pretty neat if you think about it, that we did 1922. We had read the short story prior, and then we watched it. Then we read Cycle of the Werewolf and watched Silver Bullet.
I love Silver Bullet. I mean, Silver Bullet was such a good time. But it's
just neat that we picked 2 films that we've read the books also.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's pretty good. I mean, we did actually watch quite a few movies based on books that we've read.
We did.
So I think that's pretty neat also. But that's about all I have to say for 1922. it was enjoyable to me. I liked it. I'm glad it turned out pretty well, pretty decent, because not all books, are turned of Stephen King's books are turned into great movies. So.
Agree. And I do think it was faithful for the most part, except for that one big change, which I do wish they wouldn't have changed. But once you explained about the budget, I'm guessing that might be why. So I understand. I didn't realize that, because I thought they would have a big budget, considering, I don't know, I just thought it was going to be like, a big name movie. Usually stuff based on King, if it's for the theater, is a big movie, but if it's made for TV, it's usually not big.
Well, and this one was made for Netflix, so.
Well, Netflix usually has big budgets is the thing. That's what surprises me.
I don't know. I think they were limited on that. And I guess you also have to take in consideration who's acting in it, and, their salaries and what it takes to also, it takes place in 1922. So you have to take in consideration
stuff, the clothes,
the period stuff, clothing,
old cars.
Yes. So there's a lot that goes into it that most people don't realize. And that's why it costs so much to make a film.
Before we move on, another King related thing I want to ask you. So have you ever seen The Langoliers, the adaptation of the story? Or is it a book?
Is this the one where they're in an airport?
They're in an airplane.
An airplane.
And there's these flying oh my God.
It is I've seen it so long ago. Yeah, but I think it might be based on either a novella or a short story, which I have not read it.
I don't know. I'm scared to say that we should do it for the Year of King, because I know how bad the film is. Burke and I, Burke from our book club, he and I watched it a long time ago, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed because it was so bad. But at the same time, I'd love to see the original story. And this is a perfect example of how you said some of his works do not transfer over.
Yes.
That is a perfect example. If you guys watching have seen The Langoliers, I think you know what I mean. Comment below if you have seen it and what you thought about it, if so. And if you haven't, beware, because it is really bad, but it's so bad that it's funny in a way, but it doesn't mean to be. So that might be something to think about. I didn't put that on my list.
That's true.
But,
I mean, we could pick a couple that we know have not really, that if we've seen the adaptations but not read the story or the book, we could maybe revisit and just see, where did they go wrong? What could they have done better?
Right. I just don't know how, some of Stephen King's books and works are really long. So I don't know how long The Langoliers is, but obviously, we're also going to read it at one point. We know that for sure.
Yes.
That one's long. So we got to pace out the long ones. We can't do 3 months in a row, super long ones. So we'll see, but something to think about, because I did not send that to you in my initial, ones that I might want for our Year of King. I didn't add that one, but let's think about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on now to a movie that we can't say much about, really. It is kind of also hard to discuss the meaning of, and I have mixed feelings about this one too. This is Pulse from 2001. It's on a lot of best horror movie lists, by the way. So the premise: after a college student commits suicide, a number of young adults living in Tokyo witness terrifying visions transferred across the internet. As more people disappear throughout the city, the internet becomes a breeding ground for malevolent spirits. By the way, I didn't understand that really. I mean, I kind of understood about the spirits, but I didn't know it was a breeding ground. I was all confused during the story. It says a number of characters attempt to solve the mystery behind the ghostly visions that are seeping beyond their computer monitors. Really, they try to solve it. It doesn't seem like they're trying to solve it. It just seems like they're walking around confused. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm very puzzled about this movie. So the rating, 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb, 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is fairly high. A 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and 80% of Google users liked it. What do you think, Kat?
Well, it was slow. I have to say it was slow. I enjoyed it. I mean, I'm glad I watched it. And
I'm glad I watched it too.
I felt like it was eerie. There were times where I felt uneasy.
I will say I got goosebumps.
There were very
I agree.
Moments at times. It was taking a little while to try to figure out really what was the premise of this movie. I know that just doing some research on the movie that, people during the pandemic, this movie kind of resurfaced a little bit because of the whole,
wow,
situation with like that isolation and what happens when you're spending too much time alone and you isolate yourself and you're not, intermingling with people, you get lost, somehow, and it's easy for you to get lost. And that so much with this technology. And the thing about it is this was pretty much close to the Y2K thing, when everybody was worried what was going to happen, with technology at that point. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think it's a cool premise that, the internet could somehow, have some kind of evil agenda and pretty much try to wipe everybody out through, getting them alone and having them, feel such despair and loneliness that they would, or isolation, that they would either take their lives or, disappear because, there are scenes in it where people just disappear just because they're in such despair, or they're just so upset, or they've seen these ghosts and they can't handle this happening to them. And it's almost like apocalyptic, too, by the time you get to the end of the movie,
with
it's
the
like,
boat.
was this supposed to be apocalyptic? But, and then also too, if you are a person that does not like foreign films, with subtitles, this is a Japanese horror film. And it does have subtitles, so you really have to pay attention to them to understand what's going on. I do think they did a good job of showing despair and isolation with where they were, like the setting of it. A lot of grays, and it was dark in areas, a lot of things in shadows, but I don't know. It took a little while to go on. I liked that one little character that was in there that, was trying to he was the one that was trying to figure things out.
He was,
with the one girl that was from that little shop that she worked at. And then he runs into another lady that's, I don't even know what her job was. Was it kind of like marketing or something? And he tries to help her. And I think it was just like all over the place. It didn't really have, just jump from one thing to the next thing. And I don't know. I was confused a lot of the time about what was going on. But I must say there was one scene in this movie.
The girl creeping up over
that woman.
Yes.
It was the combination of the music,
the face,
and her slow motion and how she moved. I was just like, I had goosebumps.
I did too. That's the part that freaked me out. Yeah, that freaked me out.
I am like, oh my gosh. And when he bends down and there's nothing under the chair, basically, and I'm like, I almost wanted to cover my eyes.
Me too. That part was effective. To me, that was the best part of the film. Yes. And that wasn't that far into the film. So I thought, okay, now things are going to like escalate. But I felt like that was the high point and then it dipped again. And so that was a shame because like it was going up, up, up. That awesome scene happened. And I agree with you. I literally also had goosebumps. I'm not just like trying to agree with you. I'm torn about the film because like I love some of the visual elements of it.
Yes, me
in
too.
terms of like the creepiness. And I felt like it definitely had a very good eerie mood. But I feel like, just like you said, the story was kind of convoluted in that they didn't really execute it in terms of like showing what was happening or explaining things.
Exactly. And I felt like it was disjointed. And you didn't have a backstory. And like, even, I don't know if I missed something, but like, they have tape all around these doors. And it's like, well, why
I didn't understand that?
But then people go into them and untape them and go in. And it's like, well, why were they taped to begin with? At first I thought, well, maybe something, it's like quarantining something, but it's like nothing is ever revealed that anybody knows what the big picture is. It's just all these things happen and
we don't know why
disappearing and, that kind of stuff. And that's why I said, I have a lot of questions about it. And it's the kind of thing I almost wish there was a story And then if I had the backstory of it, like say this was a short story or a graphic novel or something.
It may be, but I don't know what it is.
You know what I'm saying? And then went into it, I would understand it, I think, a little bit better. But I do think they were trying to get across, what happens when we're a society that relies a lot on technology. Once technology came on board, people started isolating more because they were spending more time on their computers. Now look at us. We have these phones, and people are even more disconnected with one another, because before all the technology came about, people had to make an effort to go out and see people. I mean, you talked on the phone, and there was no texting and all that. So I can see the point of that, and I think that's where the neatness, the cool premise of it comes, that you're having something that could be a servant to you, as far as technology is good because it serves you in a way, but when it becomes the master of your life, basically, you can have some dire consequences. So that's kind of the gist I got out of it.
I totally agree. I'm like on the same wavelength as you. It's just such a shame because the underlying idea was so cool.
Yes.
I could totally see what they were trying to say. It's just like the taped door. It's like, I thought I had missed something too, because all of a sudden they start taping doors. I'm like, well, who was the first one to do it? How does that relate back to the internet with this taped door? It's like, if you go to the taped door, through the taped door, you see something horrific, and then you become trapped in like the same despair as everyone else.
Right.
So how is that related to the internet though?
Exactly.
That part was confusing.
Why does it take over some people more than it takes over other people? Like, what's the difference,
Yeah, exactly. So many questions. And I got to say, so I'm not a stranger to Japanese horror films, because I've watched the Japanese version of The Ring called Ring You. I have watched the Japanese version of The Grudge, and I actually really like those films. I mean, I like the American version of The Ring better, but I think that the Japanese version of The Grudge is just as good as the American version in that case. So it's not that I have any problem with it because it's foreign, but maybe something did get lost in translation, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. There is an American version of Pulse, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm almost curious to go to see, want to see that one and just kind of see if something's revealed, because there was a movie, it's called Let the Right One In. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I love both versions.
I love both versions. I saw the foreign version first and then saw the American version. And the American version explained things that I totally missed in the foreign version. So it's not that it wasn't well made and they didn't have the components they needed, but I do think there was something missing in it. And it could be that when you're trying to pay attention to subtitles and you're trying to watch, that you miss a little something there.
Could be it. And it's a shame because like the creepiness factor was there.
Yes.
It was one of the movies that scared me the most, actually.
I'm telling you, that scene is even if you just watch the movie for that scene alone, because I rewatched that scene while I was, taking notes and stuff, and I'm like freaked out. And it was like during the day, it's sunny. And I'm like, I shouldn't be watching this.
That was one of the scenes that got to me the most out of all the movies. So yeah, it had good parts, and that's why I'm torn on it. Like, it had great scary stuff, but then like I was all confused and like, what's going on? So yeah, like you said, we should look at that other version and perhaps watch it. That would be a good thing to do for the future.
And then we could maybe kind of compare and contrast.
Yeah.
It, for the future.
I think it's a plan. All right. So anything more to add on that one?
Nope. That's all I have.
In Kelsi and Kat fashion, we're already going longer than we thought on all of these movies so far. It's so funny. It's so us. All
yes,
right.
because before we started, we said this isn't going to be a very long chat.
I knew it was wrong when we said that. We were jinxing ourselves, of course.
That's right.
All right, and now comes to a movie that actually we really can't talk too much about because it would spoil everything. So this is The Brood from 1979, and the premise: a mad doctor tries an experimental therapy called psychoplasmics on a raging woman. And this got 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb. It has an 84% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and 87% of Google users like it. I personally loved it. I really liked it. I know you liked it, but it wasn't your favorite. So you take it away.
It's really odd how I feel about it. It's like there's some parts of it that are extremely disturbing to me, like when you really sit with it. And I think what bothers me about the film is not so much the story and the horror part of it. I think what I don't like the best is the fact that it was a movie from 1979 and it just seems dated, you know. But when you think about, I mean, I have to say, you know, it is suspenseful, and the time I'm watching it, it was kind of freaky in many parts, you know, and we really can't say much about the movie because just even from the very beginning of the movie, it really kind of reveals too much, I guess is the best way to say it. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I mean, The Brood is one of Stephen King's favorite movies. It's made his list.
I didn't know you. Okay, it's officially one of his favorites, though. It is
like one that was mentioned in The Dance Macabre. You know, that he talks about. You know, like really great horror movies.
I thought he was basically shouting out like influential movies. I didn't know it was like a personal favorite, though.
It's one of his favorites, or ones that he would recommend as a great horror movie.
Oh, good.
But it is disturbing. Oliver Reed plays the Mad Doctor, which, you know, back in the day, he was like a leading man and supposed to be really good looking and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of interesting to see him in a film.
Yeah.
I like the fact that David Cronenberg directed it because we saw him in Nightbreed. You know, he was Decker in Nightbreed, and we saw his acting chops in that. Well, this one we see his directing chops.
Yeah.
And I will say, this is a fun fact that I found out about this. David Cronenberg was going through a custody battle very similar to what the father was going through in this story. He was writing the script at the time he was going through that divorce.
So this is his way of working through it, kind of.
Yes. And they talked a little bit about Kramer versus Kramer was coming out about the same time. And this was almost like a horror take of Kramer versus Kramer.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
But so I thought that was pretty interesting that his film, and that kind of, if you think about what was happening in the film, that was pretty stressful for what was going on with the father and everything surrounding, you know, why they are getting a divorce, basically.
Right.
But also another thing, this film is a nod to Don't Look Now. And I find that Don't Look Now seems to come up quite often as influences on several of films we have watched, not just for this marathon, but for marathons in the past. So there's something to say about that. You know, I mean, we saw it with Alice, Sweet Alice. There was a nod to that.
We even talked about the kind of similarities to Don't Look Now when we talked about Alice, Sweet Alice. Yes. I'll link that chat up here because it's a great chat. We were live and in person, and we talked about Alice, Sweet Alice, but lots of other movies as well for our slasher marathon. It was great. But yeah, Don't Look Now. It is a good film.
It is a good film, and I think you would understand what I'm talking about, the nod in this film. You know, why they're saying that. But I think they did a great job. The actress that was chosen was I think a really good choice. She just had that look about her. I do know, as far as costs, you know, her scenes were shot I think in 3 days because they wanted to try to save some money. So a lot of her shots were done, you know, within that 3-day span or whatever. And I mean, at that time, I'm sure Oliver Reed was being paid pretty decently also, you know, at the time, since he was somebody pretty popular, a popular celebrity at the time. So I don't know, the whole premise of the movie to me is scary. So it's not like I didn't like it. It's just not on the same scale as some of our horror movies of today. I know you appreciate older horror movies a little more than I do, I think.
Well, I do think I appreciate them more than you, but I think it's so weird that I do, because like I'm always kind of one to steer away from black and white horror movies, which I really should be appreciative of. And that's why whenever I like watch a movie from the 70s, I'm always like, uh-oh, am I really gonna like this? Like, it's an older one. And I kind of brace myself. But two of my favorite movies from my entire marathon were from the 70s. It's crazy. One we're about to talk about in a few minutes. And of course, this one, The Brood. I freaking loved it. One, there was body horror.
Yes.
I'm not gonna say what it is, but it blew me away. Like how like unsettling, creepy, disgusting
is probably pretty much the
disgusting, horrific, like I couldn't even believe.
And I do think some people probably would think it was like, not that great or whatever because of the special effects, but you have to consider it at the time. I just know some people, when you look at what their comments are about certain practical effects or whatever back in the day, sometimes they just, I don't know, they're like, oh, that was stupid, whatever.
Away.
But when I watch a movie, I try to think of putting myself in the situation of the character that has to experience that. Like if I have to truly experience that in person, I think I would have probably thrown up.
Yeah.
Because it's just horrible. It's horrible to think about it happening to a person, but it's also just horrible to look at. And then the fact of what she does, and this is a thing too, that scene in there is controversial because David Cronenberg had to have part of it cut out because it was so disturbing to people to see it, and he was upset about it. Yeah. But it was either you don't have your film shown to an audience or, you need to comply with this kind of thing.
Right.
But It was the perception of what people thought was happening with it. But I have to say, just the little that I saw that was kept in the movie was disgusting. And also, I want to give props to the little girl, because the fact that the little girl had to play a part like that was interesting, because there were parts where it wasn't like it was shot where you could see she was all by herself. Things were happening to her that were creepy and scary, I think. I don't know how old she was at the time, but she looked pretty young.
Oh, yeah. She had to be young. I know sometimes they use older actresses, but she had to be truly young. She did a great job. What a wonderful, cute little actress. And didn't seem like she was like overacting. That's hard with kids. Like sometimes you get kid actors who overact, then other times it just seems a lot more natural. And I know you don't like 70s films as much because of the acting and like other aspects. I personally like practical effects more than CGI. Like I Am Legend ruined because of the CGI for me. Whereas this, like practical effects, I'll take them all day, every day. I don't care what people say about it looking worse. I don't think it looks worse. It looks like it's like real and there. It doesn't look like it's something that's like, you can't see the texture. With CGI, you can't really feel the texture. Like in your eyes don't see it. I just can't agree with CGI as much as like practical. I'll take practical every time.
Well, and I wanted to just say there was just one scene in there that kind of, I don't know if it bothered me as much as I was kind of surprised by it, because I don't think you would see this in films today, where the dad is giving the little girl a bath.
Oh yeah, I was surprised by that too, actually.
I was very surprised, just not that anything's wrong with that. Obviously, dads give their children baths, but the fact that this was not truly her dad. She's an actress in this film, doing that. And it wasn't like it was graphic or anything. I was just surprised by that. I was also surprised, and my husband said he didn't think anything was wrong with that. He's seen that or whatever, is that the father kisses the little girl on her mouth. And that just seemed kind of odd to me too. But I guess because I never did that in my family.
Well, I mean, I had a friend who would kiss her mom like that when she left, and I saw it and I was like, that is weird. Like, I never thought that was like.
But my husband said that he didn't think that was weird, because that was one thing that I was like, he just kissed her on the mouth.
That's, some like families kiss that way. I mean, my family never did.
And I just thought it was also too, because even though I know they're playing characters, it's just, this is an adult man kissing a child on her mouth, and they're not really related, daughter and father. So I just thought that was
so you're looking at it like the actor perspective.
Well, I did, because there was a scene in the black and white version of The Innocents. If you remember, you saw that movie, didn't you? You haven't watched it. Okay. Well, there's a scene in it, because I had watched it and I had commented on it when we had a previous chat. And there's a scene in there where she kisses the boy.
Yeah, and you said controversial at the time.
Yes, and at the time it was, and I could see that, because again, I mean, in that case, it wasn't even a mother and a son; it was a governess and a son, and it wasn't meant to be in a romantic way, But I was just surprised by it, and then I found out during research. Now, I did not research that part in there, just to see if there was any issue with it, because I think the issues would come up now, not so much at the time.
There was no rules really with kids. There was probably some rules, but not like today. Like, the things they did with Linda Blair for The Exorcist back in the day, that would never happen today.
Or Brooke Shields. I mean, look at Brooke Shields.
It would never happen.
And I think even Jodie Foster, there was some things with Taxi Driver.
Yes, like very extreme stuff for all of them, those cases.
Yeah, so it's just a little bit of a different, situation. But I thought it was a little, and it's not to offend anybody, because like I said, my husband was like totally okay. I think he said his grandmother did that, like it was not like something, taboo or terrible or whatever.
Right.
It's just not something I, have seen myself.
I saw it like because of my friend and her mom, but like I did think it was weird, like as a kid when I saw it. I was like, my mom and dad don't kiss me that way. I don't know. It's just like a kid like thinking that like, oh, that's different than how we do it, but everyone's different. So but yeah, like it's just something that you and I are not used to as much.
Exactly. But that's about all I have to say for The Brood. Like I said, we can't really go into a lot, because I would recommend it for people to watch it, because I do think it has merit, and it is scary, and in a lot of aspects, and just the one scene in there that has to do with the body horror is enough.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's scary. There's disgusting parts. The horror is great, but I also thought the mystery and the story and the unfolding of everything that was going on was kind of interesting too. So I liked it all around because of those elements. But I understand not everyone is a fan of old school 70s movies. I apparently am, and that surprises me, because some older movies I don't like. However, black and white era, I do like the Marx Brothers and their movies. So I don't know. Go figure. I don't even know what I like. I don't even know. There's really no like norm, or except for that I like corn. That's the only
yes, you do like a lot of corn.
But I would say The Brood is, to me, didn't feel corny. It felt like truly scary at some points, and I liked the acting personally. So let's go from something that I loved, you liked, to something that I also loved but you hated, and that would be Session 9. And this movie is from 2001. So the premise is terror unfolds when an asbestos removal crew begins work in an abandoned insane asylum. The rating, 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 64% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4.8 out of 5 on Shout Factory, and 75% of Google users like it. But I don't believe that number, because everyone I talk to seems to dislike it compared to me. Paul doesn't like it. Kat doesn't like it. My friend Lauren was like, eh. And like, what the? And someone on our live stream was like, I didn't like it. I hated it. I was like, what? So like everyone is ganging up being like, we don't like it. So I don't know.
Well, clearly people do. Some people do like it, because actually it was
they?
Well, it was not a financial success. I will say that.
Yeah.
But it has gained a cult film following over time. I mean, I personally thought it was boring myself. I mean, it's a psychological horror story, but let's put it this way. I find the story that inspired this more fascinating than the film.
See, I feel like I read between the lines, like you wait to the last line with this creepy voice saying this very last line. And to me, that last line that's said off of the tape recorder with a creepy ass voice, that explains everything in the movie to me.
Yeah, but
and I can't get into it.
You should not have to wait till the last line
but I think
of
there's
the
good
film
stuff.
to be like, yes, that was awesome. Because look, Driller Killer had a pretty decent ending. And that didn't save the film for me either.
I know. But I thought there was good horror. I mean, there's a dude getting freaking, what's it called again? Your brain.
A lobotomy.
I have a lobotomy because I can't think of the name. That must be what's wrong with me. But no, I mean, you see freaking like an eye getting pierced, which creeps me out, of course.
Okay, well, I mean, the kills and stuff were good. I just felt like to me, it was like a slow descent into madness. You could see the crew falling apart. There's the atmosphere of actually shooting in a creepy ass insane asylum that like really looked like dilapidated and run down and spooky as hell. Like I would have never wanted to set foot in there. I don't know. I feel like it was another character, that place, and it was supposed to be. And there's little hints. Once you watch the end, you get little hints that something is amiss and that the character who turns out to be bad is getting influenced by like something. You see hints of this throughout the movie if you like know what to look for, if you pay close attention. I'm so passionate, my earbuds are coming out. I'm pulling out my earbuds. But you would like to know this also. This film was inspired by the film Don't Look Now as well.
Really?
Yes.
I don't see how.
I don't know. I found that out in my notes. So I don't know if it's because, we keep missing something. Like in Don't Look Now, you always have that image of that person in your periphery vision. And in this film, you always know there's something there, but you can't quite figure out what it is. Right. You can't grasp it. You can't really see it. And that's what's revealed towards the end, if you kind of think about it that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm stretching to try to see how it's inspired. But
I honestly would have to rewatch Don't Look Now. Now I've seen Session 9 way more than Don't Look Now, so I wouldn't need to rewatch Session 9 again.
But I do see the influence in Alice Sweet Alice, yes, as well as in The Brood.
So do I.
I don't know. Like I'm saying, there must be something else that's going. If anything, I think the inspiration from Don't Look Now must have something to do with the husband and wife dynamics.
Yes,
and their marriage and everything.
That he's a dad, and
yes, that is where I think the issue is with that. But I did find it interesting that this was inspired by a real case that happened in the mid '90s. It's actually called the Burnt Ziti murder.
Oh,
ziti, like you eat ziti.
So someone spilled some hot ziti on somebody and they went wild. I thought that might be it.
Well, Richard Rosen. Okay, this is the Richard Rosenthal case. Okay, Brad Anderson grew up in the area where Richard Rosenthal gets tried because his wife burns a pan of ziti. And it enrages him, so he strangles her to death. He takes her in the backyard. He dissects her body. After smashing her face with a rock, he decides to take her lungs, her heart, and place it on a stake in some kind of like symbolic gesture.
What the hell?
Okay, they had a 4-month-old daughter. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, he did not do anything to the 4-month-old daughter. He leaves, goes somewhere, acts weird, whatever. He gets caught and he is in jail, a life sentence without parole. He tried to plead insanity because that is pretty insane that you would do these things to your wife because she burnt your dinner. But he lost. And that's why, so that is how Session 9, the story, that underlying story comes about.
That is interesting. I could see similarities already, but I do think that the original story does seem a little more horrific. But this isn't just about killing. The Session 9, there's a bigger element, and like I said, that is revealed at the end. And to me, that like makes it all make sense. And so I can't even reveal what type of story it is to defend it. I can't even defend it, like, because it would be spoiling stuff. But let me just say that there's more to it. But
so all of you watching, please check out session 9 if you have not watched it.
And give us your opinion.
And let us know your opinion. So
like
that way Kelsi feels like she's not all alone if you like it. If you like it. If you don't like it, please don't tell her, because then she'll really feel like she's getting ganged up on.
Y'all can tell me if you don't like it. I kind of want to know, like, you know, how many more people dislike it and why. I mean, I know the big complaint is it's slow. I just thought the atmosphere, like if you took 1922 and session 9, to me, I would take the slowness of session 9 every single time. I just felt like the setting added so much to it for me personally. I don't know. And I love the story that 1922 is based on. So it's not about the story. It's about some kind of the execution. But this is a perfect example about subjective
yes,
opinions.
It is, because think about it. I mean, 1922 was a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
I like that slow burn because I could see elements of it, what made it work for it. You didn't like that.
Yeah.
You didn't like the slow pacing of it.
Yeah. It's just funny
Session
why I like this
the
one.
same way, except it worked for you, but it didn't work for me.
I wish I could go back and remember how I felt the first time I watched it. Well, did I think it was dragging? Like, you know, I'm talking about the ending, how the ending really makes everything make sense, at least in my mind. I still wonder, how did I react? It's been so long. I honestly don't remember how I felt during that first initial viewing. So maybe I was like, this is dragging. But I honestly don't think I ever felt that way about the movie, because I might not have bought it or, you know, revisited it after feeling that way. But I don't know. I understand why some people would think it's slow, but for me, I like it because of the unique setting, let's just say. I like that a lot. And
well, I mean, I was pretty much, excited and had expectations for it because of the whole premise that they were going to be going in to this insane asylum, that there were things that happened there and that we were going to find out a bunch of, you know, backstories of different patients that were there and all that. And so I think when you go into something with these expectations and they're not fulfilled, you come out being disappointed. You know?
I agree, because there are books even like that. Like the title might suggest one thing, and then the book's about something different. And somebody was like, "Well, I was going in thinking it'd be this type of story," and so I was really bummed out and like disappointed. And like, so you probably thought like ghost galore popping up, like really eerie the whole time, because they're in the asylum the whole time. So why isn't shit balls to the wall crazy? I totally understand that. I do understand. You had one idea, and it was another.
I mean, that's one reason you should be careful when you're watching trailers, especially for horror movies, because sometimes you go in thinking it's going to be a supernatural horror movie and it comes out being a home invasion. And you're like, what the heck? How did this happen? I mean, that's happened to me a couple of times. So it's almost like you don't want to see the trailers.
Oh, I never watch
for some of these movies because
anymore.
You're misled with that. And so I think just even looking at the movie poster, to me, I just had these expectations that this is the type of film it's going to be. You know, they had decent actors in it. You know, David Caruso played Phil. I mean, he's famous for NYPD Blue and CSI Miami. And then Josh Lucas is in it. He plays Hank. And, you know, he's been in several movies. One that I liked a lot, Sweet Home Alabama.
I like that movie,
you know,
too.
So it's not like they didn't have a good cast, you know, that was in it. So I do think part of that is that my expectations wasn't for it to be one way, and it ended up not meeting those expectations. And, you know,
and you know what? When I watched it, there was no hype surrounding it. Right now, it does have a hype surrounding it because people kind of like me say, oh, it's an underrated movie. It's an underrated horror film.
Well, it did, like I said,
an atmosphere around it that some people are going in and they like might be getting something that they thought was different than what they originally expected.
Right. Well,
so
like I said, it's gained a cult following. I mean, it might have just over the years, it's word of mouth.
I mean, when I watched it, I had no expectations. That's the difference. You had my expectations, like, hey, it's great, it's underrated. So now I understand why you might not have liked it as much as me, seeing it for the first time. I will say, before we move on, we do have to highlight the greatest part of the entire film. And I'm going to curse, so I'm sorry, but it's literally the best utterance of fuck you ever. Like, literally ever on film. So there's this great part where one of the guys is like, hey, fuck you, and it zooms in on him. It's awesome. I laugh every time. And me and Burke, we say that to each other now. We're like, hey, fuck you, and we do it like that. Like, and then so it's like a joke between my friend Burke and I now, because that part's just great. It's literally the best utterance of it ever in any film, at least in my opinion. So to me, like, it's worth watching for that alone.
Hey, fuck you.
I can't even do it justice. And I'm sorry, pardon my French. I hardly ever curse on the channel, but it is for adults, so I think that's okay. We're talking about body horror. We're talking about freaking guys drilling people's heads. I mean, I think we can say that every now and then. All right, so now let's move on to another kind of slowish burn movie, I would say. And this is Let's Scare Jessica to Death from 1971, another 70s movie. And this is the other movie I was referring to that I really, truly enjoyed. So it was The Brood and this one, both from the 70s. In my opinion, both awesome. I know you like them both, but didn't love them both. And basically the premise is a recently institutionalized woman has bizarre experiences after moving into a supposedly haunted country farmhouse and fears she may be losing her sanity once again. And this is rated 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. It has 36% on Rotten Tomatoes, so not very good at all. I mean, if you look at this compared to Session 9 is much better. 70% on Just Watch, which is actually a great tool if you're looking on how to watch movies, where a movie is available to watch. Just Watch is a good app to use where you could find out where to view stuff across, multiple platforms. And then 85% of Google users liked it. So the users like it more than the critics, or at least the critics who rated it on Rotten Tomatoes. So,
well, and guess what? This is another one of Stephen King's favorite horror movies.
Yep. Because we did mention that slightly, I think, in one of our chats. I'm losing track on which chat we mentioned what in, but I know we mentioned it in a previous chat that he had shouted out both Let's Scare Jessica to Death and The Brood. And I do think both do warrant a viewing, because I feel like Let's Scare Jessica to Death, what it does so well is it takes an examination about mental health and the stigmas around it. Also, it does have a very unsettling atmosphere. And it is rather subtle. I will say, not only is it a slow burn, but the horror that does arise is subtle overall. It wouldn't be in your face. Like, it's not body horror. I would even say that The Brood is more in your face than Let's Scare Jessica to Death. However, that didn't take away from it for me, because I freaking loved it. It was something about the atmosphere that I liked.
Yes. I mean, it's eerie. It's mysterious. I mean, it is a minor cult classic. And this year it celebrated its 50th anniversary, just like The Brood. Because that was 1971 too, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. It was
The Brood was 1979. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. I know what it is. The Brood and Driller Killer both came out in the same year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
okay.
1979.
Yeah, okay. So this is the 50th anniversary. It actually was released in August of 1971. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I feel the atmosphere is eerie, especially the scenes in the water. The scenes in the town with the townspeople is really disconcerting to me.
Yes,
Emily, the hippie that they find in the house when they first get to the farmhouse, I had weird vibes from her from the onset.
I would have kicked her ass out right away.
I know.
I did not like her. I did not like her right away. What are they thinking?
I know. I personally thought it was weird. And I was a little troubled that Jessica, who's the main character, who she just gets released from the, mental hospital because she had a nervous breakdown, that she even suggests that Emily stays with them. They don't even know this woman.
And she was already crashing in the house, like,
she was a squatter, almost like she was a squatter.
They know nothing about her. Why would they invite her to stay? I don't get that.
That was my thing, but it was like Jessica, the husband, and the friend of Jessica and the husband, when they discover her, I mean, he had purchased the house. So it wasn't like it was an empty house and they were just going to rent it. He had actually purchased the house. And then we discover this person here. And she was just creepy from the beginning. Like there was just something off about her from the very beginning. And we soon learned that it's a big mistake, them letting her stay.
Yes.
You know, but then I think you get into a situation with Jessica. She's an unreliable protagonist. And this movie was actually inspired by Henry James's Turn of the Screw, which Turn of the Screw is another movie that seems to influence many filmmakers. And there's also a film called The Haunting from 1963 that was a film by Robert Weiss that also inspired this movie. I mean, I liked it. I'm glad I added it to my marathon. You know, it was slower than The Brood, but I think it's because the horror that's happening in The Brood is so significantly different than what's happening in Let's Scare Jessica to Death. You don't know what's reality and what's, you know, make believe. I mean, for a long part of the movie, you're trying to figure it out.
Right.
You know, it bothered me about the little animal that was in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that bothered me.
That bothered me too. Oh my God.
You know, I'm just an animal lover. It's not that I can't watch anything that happens to animals, but it was just so sad considering what it meant to the main character.
I just feel so bad for like Jessica, but at the same time, you know, how scary is it to not know what's happening? Is it real or not? Like yourself, you don't know. Like, is this really happening? Am I like descending into madness? That in itself is scary as the person who's experiencing it. But another level is if it is really happening, holy shit, it's even scarier. And then also stuff that unfolds in her personal life that is actually happening is also sad for her. That makes me feel really bad for her. Like,
it really does, because if you think about it, like we really don't know what put her in the hospital to begin with. We know that she has a nervous breakdown and she goes there. And this is like a fresh start. Her husband played with a symphony and he gives his whole entire career up, and they buy this farmhouse because he loves his wife so much that he wants her to have a fresh start. So, you know, the two of them and their friend, their mutual friend, are going to make a go of living in this little town. But the little town is another creep factor as well. The people in the town are creepy, you know, except for that one little guy who runs the antique shop. You know, he's about the only normal person, but that's because he ended up moving to the town.
Right. He's not from there.
Yeah, he's not from there. But I just think it's so sad, some of the things, like you said, that happened to Jessica, you know, because you think that love will conquer all, but sometimes the powers that be, or powerful people or entities or whatever, just, you know, some people aren't strong enough. And what I like about it is that Jessica proves that she is. Yeah. You know, and that's what I liked, you know, is that when it's all said and done, you know, I can't say much more than that. Yeah. It's just that, you know, that she's not going to give in or try to descend back into what she was fighting to get out of originally. You know, for me.
I just thought this was so multifaceted, even though it was kind of, you know, subtle. I thought it was great. I mean, I really thought it had a lot of layers to it, and that's what made it interesting. It was a different kind of horror, in my opinion. And although it was slower, I still think on the whole it worked, and it did disturb me. A movie from 1971, super slow, disturbed me. And I think that means it was truly effective and did its job. And that's why I really loved it. And it took me by surprise, because I thought, oh, this is just going to be a boring older movie. I'm really taken aback by how much I liked it. And I can't really even place my finger on why I liked it so much. I just think overall, the whole package, I like the way it was shot. I like the creepy music. I like the setting. It felt spooky. And I don't know, all the elements together, I just think worked. It was a perfect storm of things that, for me personally, made it a good movie. I will say someone else who I know recently who was talking about this movie, my friend Olivia, she has a channel called AV Reads. I will link her channel down below. Please go subscribe to her. She has, not as many subscribers as she deserves because she does great content, very, very smart, very analytical, love her stuff. And she's from Louisiana. She's from Lafayette.
Woo-hoo,
so that's kind of cool that she lives in Louisiana like we do. So locals got to shout out locals.
That's
but
right.
Yeah. And I also mentioned Juan earlier, even though I was saying it more like he doesn't like Session 9, but I will also link his channel below as well because he's amazing. Mm-hmm. And I actually will be doing a collab on his channel soon with a few other booktubers. I'm really excited about it. So I will link both channels down below. Both are great booktubers. And Olivia, like I was saying, she really likes Let's Scare Jessica to Death. So I'm not the only one, like with Session 9.
I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it. It's slow paced, but again, I think there's the element. I mean, it's dated. Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly, but I do think for this one, it lends to it because again, it kind of reminds me of 1922. With the time, the town that they're living in, the time period that it's taken place in. The build is a little bit different than you would expect, like in Session 9, I think, as far as the slowness that was happening in that one.
Here's a question about 70s stuff. I think this is from the 70s. I might be wrong, though. It might be early 80s. Do you like the movie The Graduate? Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Do you like it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you don't think that's dated? Like that's one of my favorite movies. So I'm not. Well,
I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time. I'm sure
right.
If I watch it now, I'm like, looking.
Wow, it's 1967. So I'm just trying to compare. Like when you say dated, like I want to try to understand like what puts you off about it being older or dated. Like is it the filming?
A lot of times, I think it's the acting. To me, is a little bit. It's just different than the acting of today.
Right. But you could say that about The Graduate. And I think The Graduate's one of the greatest films of all time. But I think if you looked at it today, you would think it's dated. However, I just think, I don't know how I could put that aside personally. I just think, I don't know. I don't know why it works for me. I'd like to see what you think about The Graduate, like in recent, like, a recent viewing of it, just for comparison, because that is like, universally kind of lauded as a great movie. And it'd be interesting to get your take, like, now when we're watching all these old school movies to see if you feel the same way about it.
I mean, honestly, I prefer this movie and I also prefer The Brood over Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, really?
I mean, because yes, because to me, the horror in this, and I think also too, looking at as far as the acting and how the setting and everything, I just think it's better. It was better shot than Sleepaway Camp in that respect.
So we're just talking about the performance. We're not talking about, are we talking about the story too?
I'm talking about performance. Now the story is disturbing, Sleepaway Camp, just in itself, everything that happens. But when you look at like and then that was the 80s, so you know how I felt about Sleepaway Camp. It was sort of like all the reaction shots to horrific things happened on Tuesday after they shot all the horrific things on, Sunday.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I need you to come in and remember, this is the part when the man had the water fall on his face and cause it to blister because it was hot. I want you to react how you would think that would look. Like it didn't seem like it was
still.
Yes. Yeah. There was like really no reaction to it. Whereas you could see a little more reaction,
Let's Scare Jessica to Death did not have like reactions like that, I would say. Not at all. So in that way, yes, the performances are definitely better in The Brood and definitely in Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
And I guess
agree.
Maybe too, it's like maybe I'm misusing dated. I guess it's also too like, I mean, that was one of the things, like, I always love Salem's Lot. Like for the longest time, I was like, that is like one of my favorite movies. It was made for television. David Soul's in it. Oh, it's, I just remember it just being like great, wonderful, whatever.
Right.
And then when I saw it for a marathon, it's not that there's anything wrong with the story. And there's a terrible part in it that I'm still afraid of as a 52-year-old woman. But I was just like, oh my God, this film, it's so Dated. It's like, from like
what
the
other word can you
use?
Acting
and the shots and like the music and how the soundtrack is. And like there wasn't a soundtrack. It was just whatever that music is that's underneath it. It's different than today. Today, a lot of times a movie's carried by a soundtrack. Like you can literally go get it somewhere. And it's different. And it's not like I was born in 1969. So I was used to growing up with movies from the 70s and the 80s.
Right.
And, so you would think, that wouldn't stand out to me, but it does.
When you're immersed in like current stuff, especially, and then like when you go backwards, sometimes it is hard to make that transition from like watching a lot of newer stuff, and then all of a sudden jumping back to something that you used to be fond of and think of as a certain way. It could totally change because, as we talked about, rewatches, you're in a different place in life.
Yes,
things are different. So that is the reason why rewatches are sometimes important, but also risky in some cases. Like with Night Breed.
Because also too, when I saw Salem's Lot, I was a kid. Of course,
exactly.
That content was scary to a kid, but like I said, there is a scene in there that still frightens me. Like I still am scared by it. Every time I see it, or whatever, or even think about it, honestly. But
you just texted me about that scene the other day.
I know. But I think that is what it is for me is, and then also too, because I've been, on a journey, my acting journey, and I take classes and I take workshops and I'm, actually acting myself, that it's hard not to look at that aspect of it, and then, having a little background in it because our degree is in film and TV, and what goes into making it. And it's like, if they would have spent a little extra money, maybe, or if they would have hired a better editor, something. But anyway, I think that's what it is for me. It's not that I don't enjoy the story. I think there is merit to the stories, both of them. But compared to some other horror movies that I've seen, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, I have other favorites.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. I think it's fascinating to examine why possibly you think that, you know what I mean?
Yes, but also too, it's apples and oranges too.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. If we put the film, like we watch films in these marathons that come from all different types of horror. It's not like we're watching 10 or 20 vampire movies.
Right.
And we're comparing these 10 to 20 vampire movies and saying, what is your top 10 out of that based on story and performance and all that, the whole package. That's a little bit different.
These are so different.
But sometimes we're comparing a psychological horror to body horror to campy horror to almost like something that even almost crosses the line to torture porn. So you have to take that in consideration, that when you're watching these movies, one of these would have been my first film that I had seen, it might have been my favorite at the time.
Right.
But if I've seen a movie that I thought was just awesome right from the get-go, like to me, Silver Bullet, to me, I like that one much more than I like these two films.
Right.
But there was other parts of it that just worked for me. Maybe it was the faster pace. Maybe the fact that Stephen King's behind it, it's, the actors that were in it, the story itself, so I don't know. It's kind of hard sometimes to compare our films to each other.
Like when we rank them, it's so difficult sometimes. Like, it's like, I don't know. Especially like you said, when they're so different. Whereas before, like when we were doing our slasher marathon, at least we could have the criteria of like, do we think it's a slasher or not? If something's like less slashery than something else, we could maybe rate it a little like, not as highly. So that helps with ranking it a little bit, at least. It gives you something to go off of besides, the typical stuff. And sometimes the typical stuff is so hard to compare, especially when it's from different decades, different types of films, yada, yada, like you mentioned. So yeah, but it's all fascinating to talk about. And like,
it is fascinating.
It really
but I want
is.
to give you one little fun fact before we move on from this film. The original screenplay was supposed to be called It Drinks Hippie Blood. That was the original screenplay. It was supposed to be comedy horror.
Really?
It was supposed to be about a group of hippies attacked by a creature that lived in water in a cove where these, people were these hippies were going to camp. Okay. They were like camping next to some water in a cove, and some creature was going to be in it and kill them or whatever.
Wow. That is so different than what
different. Right. God. So that was the original name, was called It Drinks Hippie Blood. And the director, John Hancock, agreed to direct the film on the condition he could rewrite the screenplay. Wow. So they went ahead and took some elements of the original screenplay, and then he put his spin on it as well. And that's how this movie came about.
Wow. Thank goodness he did, because I think it probably turned out better than it would have. I mean, that name alone is very strange.
Well, and think about it. I mean, he's the director. Would he want to have his name associated with something like that? I mean,
I think it's kind of cool how he's like, I'll direct, but let me rewrite the whole thing.
Right.
Pretty ballsy. I mean, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great fun fact. Thank you for looking that up. I love that. I would have never.
I love finding these like fun facts all the time.
I like it too, especially because I'm the lazy one who just gets to hear the fun facts. You're the one looking them up, but thank you so much.
I mean, let's put it this way. I would recommend both of these to people to watch. And Barry didn't watch either one. Oh no, he did watch part of The Brood. He fell asleep. But I would recommend him going back and watching it, when he's not so tired. And I would recommend Let's Scare Jessica to Death as well, just because I do think that there are, it does have merit.
Of course.
Because if you think about the story, if you put yourself into the story, if you were actually the character of Jessica, or you were actually the father in The Brood, dealing with this, it would be pretty scary.
Oh yeah, that's what I said. Like, both story situations scare me. So yeah, I totally agree with that. All right, so let's move on to a movie we disagree on again.
We've disagreed about quite a few movies for this marathon.
It's like every single one we've talked about except for Pulse, which we're on the exact same page about. Otherwise, yeah, we've kind of, and Driller Killer, we are mostly on the same page. I'm just arguing that it's better than Rotten Tail. That's all. That was just what I was trying to prove. But like, how could you rate Rotten Tail higher? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But Creep is another movie we disagree on, and I think most people will disagree with me, and that's okay. I know a lot of people love this movie. It's got like a cult following. Lots of people love it. I don't know why I didn't. I love the end.
I love it.
Like you liked Driller Killer at the ending. I loved the end, but to me, it just felt so long to get to the end. I knew something was amiss, but like at one point I was just like, this is so unbelievable that the guy does not think that something's wrong and get out of there. Just get out of there. Just get out of there no matter what it takes. But I'll explain.
Well, he tried to get out of there.
Kind of, but he could have done it sooner. He could have tried sooner, but yeah, a crazy thing happens. So this is Creep, and this is from 2014. And the premise is a young videographer enters an online ad for a one-day job in a remote town to record the last messages of a dying man. When he notices the man's odd behavior, he starts to question the man's intentions. And so that's a good description of it. But, there's a lot of strange things afoot, but it's also subtle at the same time. You just know something's wrong. The dude is creepy, hence the name Creep. So the rating, 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, very well reviewed. 78% of Google users like it. So that relatively high reviews all around. And like I said, I think I'm in the minority here. That's okay. I can't even pinpoint why.
Why? Oh, I was going to say why. Why is it that you don't like it?
Well, one of the reasons why is, like I said, I just found it so unbelievable that he just kept sticking around. But you need unbelievable people. We've talked about this before, like Terrifier. Why don't you just pee in a cup in the car? Why don't you just drive on a flat tire? Why don't you just get out of there? Once you see a glimpse at Art the Clown, just book it. Get out
like,
of here.
I would have called a taxi.
Yeah.
I mean, why couldn't you call a taxi and get into the taxi and fly away if you weren't going to drive away in your car with a flat tire? You know, it's just, it wouldn't be a horror movie because I wouldn't be in that horror movie. Let's put it that way.
We can't explain it because then there wouldn't be a movie. Like if characters were smart, we wouldn't have a premise at all.
Barry tells me that all the time when I'm like, what are you doing? I talk to the TV. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, don't turn around. Just run. Just run as fast as you can, because you know when they turn around, they're going to trip over a twig that's about the size of a pencil. You know, it's like, what are you doing? And my husband's like, you do realize it wouldn't be a movie if they didn't have all these problems. And I'm like, I get it, but it just seems so aggravating to me that they can't figure it out, because I personally would not do any of those things. Me too.
I'm with you on that. Like, and then so there would be no movie if we were.
They would not be a movie. That's right.
So I can't even pinpoint why to answer your question. I honestly don't know. Like, so some slow burns I love. Session 9 is an example. Even Let's Scare Jessica to Death in a way is a slow burn, and I enjoyed it. However, other slow burns I don't really like as much. 1922 is the example, and here Creep. I feel like you get some creepiness along the way, even right away when the videographer first gets there. But I just feel like the ending had what I wanted, and I just had to wait so long. I mean, Paul watched it with me, and I think he felt the same way. Like, come on, get there. Get there.
I don't know.
We can't take his opinion very seriously because he doesn't really like most horror movies, no matter what. So like, I'm like, you were all happy he agreed with you about Session 9, but like, really, what does it say? Like, he doesn't like most horror movies, period. Like, I don't know. It's hard with him. He's not into those, but that's okay. At least he watches them and gives them a chance. So I can't rag on him too much, but I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, to be honest with you. I was expecting one thing. I heard so much about it. Maybe that's it. So I had expectations like you did with Session 9.
Maybe so.
I had these expectations like, oh, this is a cult classic. People really love this movie. They're saying that like it's a really, really good horror movie. It's on a lot of lists. And so going in, and especially the poster, you get this creepy silhouette. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, okay, like shit's going down, pardon my French. But to me, no, it did not match up with any of those thoughts or expexptations. So maybe that's why.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's filmed like found footage. I tend to like those kind of movies. And also too, there is inspiration. I know you thought it was kind of unbelievable, but the inspiration for Creep, Patrick Brice is the director. He also plays Aaron, who is the photographer that goes to the house. So that, I thought that was pretty interesting. I liked his
character a lot.
But Bryce's experience on Craigslist and movies, which include Misery, Fatal Attraction, and some movie I've never heard of, My Dinner with Andre, are all inspiration for Creep. So he apparently has had some experiences on Craigslist to kind of prompt this or whatever.
Well, that makes it a little better. But again, I just thought it was going to be one thing and it was another thing as well.
Well, and what I liked about it is you had these two actors. They carried the movie. Joseph, the Creep. I mean, I call him the Creep. He's played by Mark Duplass, I guess is how he pronounces his last name. And Aaron's played by Patrick Brice, who is the director. Duplass's wife, Katie Alston, is the voice of Angela. And that's the only other character we really have in the film. Okay. We find out that, well, I guess I can't say, I'm not going to say, but his wife plays Angela. That's all I'm going to say, because we think Angela's one person and we find out that Angela's something different. But as time passes, Aaron suspects Joseph is, kind of off due to his weird behavior, but he tries to leave. He's prevented at some point and he finally gets away, but it's not all as it seems, even with that. I mean, it's just one of these movies that you're like, kind of like, okay. And you get over one little thing and then something happens. I just thought it was all about what is around the corner next, because Joseph is so crazy and then he's likable. So it's like he's likable in this eccentric way. So you're just like, is he just like weird and lonely, or like, he's really going to die. And so he's just really chipper and joyful and he just wants to be friends with Aaron. I mean, who knows? But I thought it was original. I thought it was creepy. There was the whole cat and mouse thing going on. Joseph is bizarre, but he's also interesting and fun to watch. There's a Creep 2 coming out, or is out. I think it's already out.
It is already
out. And I plan to check that out because I want to see what's going to happen next.
I might check it out just to see.
I think the bathtub scene.
I hated that part.
I think the bathtub scene and the wolf mask scene were both great.
The wolf mask scene was great. The bathtub scene, I was like, I'd be out of there already. I wouldn't have even lasted 2 minutes.
It was just so bizarre. And
he
so
gets
crazy.
in the tub, I'm gone. I'm going out of there. Like, this is too much for me, dude. Like, in the story that goes along with it, I'm out of here. Bye. No, I didn't like that.
It was just so bizarre and so crazy that I'm like, oh my gosh, could you imagine if this really happened? And then how Joseph and Aaron meet is a gem. Like how they first meet is just great in my opinion. To me,
foreshadowing right
there.
Yes,
there's so much foreshadowing in it.
Yeah.
I love that the scenes and dialogue were improvised. I found that out doing my research. Not everything was scripted. There was more like an outline of what was going to happen. So I like that since,
that's cool.
I like improv and I like to perform improv. I think Joseph comes off a little too nice, which adds to the uneasiness of the situation Aaron finds himself in. And there are just so many uncomfortable moments. Like it's so cringy at some points.
It is
you're just
cringy.
Like, I almost can't watch because it hurts to watch.
I can relate to that. Yes, cringy is a great word, a great description.
It's just, but like that's almost horrifying in a way that you would have to be put socially, in a situation that you're just socially uncomfortable. But this is my fun fact for this film. Patrick Bryce, this was his directorial debut.
Oh.
So his first film.
Wow, and it was a pretty good success in terms of people liking it after the fact.
Yes.
I don't know when it became popular. I'm not really sure about the stats on if it was well received right away or if it was more like it took some time, but eventually people think it's great and it's on a lot of top lists. I know that for sure.
Right. But this is a movie I would watch again with someone who hasn't watched it. Like, even though I know it's going to happen, I just want to, and also too, it'd be good to kind of see if I notice things sooner than I did notice, or whatever.
Right.
It might be a good it probably would be a good rewatch to, like, Barry didn't get to see it, so it'd probably be a good rewatch with him and then segue into Creep 2.
Right. It's a good idea.
So I don't know if you could watch Creep again though.
No, I would just dive into Creep 2. It'd be fine. I remember what happens. I do really like the end. I got to say the end was awesome. Mm-hmm. I just wish it didn't take so long to get there, and maybe it was because it was cringy. Like the social aspects, I was like, I can't take that. Like that, was off-putting, but I guess that is horror in a way. I don't know, but like it was hard to watch at points. And like to me, I just, when he lied to me, I would have been like, something is really wrong. Like, he lies at points. Like I said, the bathtub, it would be over for me. I'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't take your money. I must leave. And then there's other points where I'm like, no, that would be enough too. Like Aaron tries to escape so late. Like he just accepts things way too easily in the story.
I think Aaron though is just because of the fact that this man is dying. That
and he needs the money. He needs
the money. That he's just like, okay, maybe he was thinking the brain tumor or whatever is causing him to be odd.
Maybe. It was just so weird at points, but maybe that's what makes it great. So I'm probably not giving it its just due. And also, like, while watching, I could tell Paul didn't like it. Like, I could tell like he was super silent, almost like, come on. And maybe that does have an effect on me when I'm watching with him and he's reacting that way. It almost makes me like, come on. And that is an interesting fact to maybe examine for future movies. Like, how is it watching it alone versus with him type of thing in terms of, this was just unconventional, and I don't know if that's for everybody. And maybe if I was in a different mindset, it would have been for me. But at some point, I was just like, I would have been out of there. Nope.
Right. So you see, it did have an effect on you.
It did, kind of, yeah. It kind of did. So yeah, overall, I could see how you feel. You made great points. And by the way, before we started streaming or recording, you were like, I didn't do that much research. What the heck? You did do a lot of research. You've got fun facts popping up left and right. I really love your fun facts. Thank you.
Aw.
Like the improv fact, I would have never known that. That's kind of cool.
Well, I like all the production part and everything.
Well, I do too, and sometimes I look up
it.
stuff, but I did not today. I've been too busy rewatching all of our old chats to edit to a best of compilation, but I've been
Which
enjoying
I can't wait
too.
to see that, because the first 20 minutes was hilarious.
I'm very excited. I'm really enjoying putting that together. So much so that I've been putting off editing our video chat with the movie chat thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It is what it is, but I'm glad you enjoyed Creep, and maybe I should give it another chance, or at least give Creep 2 a chance.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anything more to add?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right, moving right along to the last film we're going to discuss, and then we're going to quickly rank our top 10 movies. So lastly, it's a classic horror story, and this is a more recent film. It was released in 2021, so that's this very year as we're recording this right now. So the premise is, in this gruesome suspense film, strangers traveling in southern Italy become stranded in the woods, where they must fight desperately to get out alive. 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, obviously split there. 2.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and 57% of Google users liked it. Not very high. So not as highly reviewed as some of the other movies we talked about today. I can understand there's a character that's super unlikable, but I do think the premise is clever, and we really can't say much about what happens. And we really can't go in depth in analyzing this, so we can only really say a few things about it. But overall, I have to say I like the artsiness of it. I was reminded of Midsommar, and I know you've got a point about that. So you go on and tell what you thought and the Midsommar point that you had.
Well, I mean, it's basically what you said. I mean, it seems similar to Midsommar, and I think that's what some people were that didn't really like the movie think it's just another, a remake of that,
but
like
so
somebody else's
though.
interpretation. So I'm almost wondering, did people even watch the whole entire film? Because it does have that vibe to it. But then once you continue watching it, you're like, oh, this is so much more. And then it just takes you down a rabbit hole that is crazy. Yes. This film is really like a mixture of several different horror films. Okay. I think you can see, I think somebody pointed out the beginning scene is almost like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Someone else pointed out they saw Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the Midsommar aspect of it is, yes, there's a nod to that, but that's not what it is. It's not just another one taking place in the south of Italy.
No,
okay?
Not at all.
I mean, it is an Italian horror film. It's dubbed in English, so you don't have to read subtitles or anything like that. But I think there's also the element of how Italian films were made, so it's a mixture, of all of these different inspirations in this one film. And I think the premise is clever.
I do too. And I think there's some social commentary, but we can't say what it is because that would be giving some things away. There's definitely commentary, and this doesn't really give anything away. Well, kind of like looking, like observing and not helping is part of the commentary.
Right.
I guess, I don't know, being withdrawn as a society more, more so than in the past.
Right. Well, and I think also the film as a whole is also something that needs to be examined when you look at violence in film. You know what I'm saying? So you don't realize what that social commentary is until you get to the end.
Right.
And at the end, you have to decide for yourself, what is this film really saying? It's sort of like Pulse. What was that film really saying? I think that had a social commentary also because of when it was being filmed. So you do have to watch through the credits. I will say that, because some things happen in the credits as well that kind of follow along what we're talking about, that there's a social commentary happening. Right. But I agree with you. There is a very unlikable character
Yes. And his voice.
Well, he's just annoying. He's obnoxious.
He's very annoying, but can we also say that the voice is annoying? I don't want to be offensive, but I think that the dubbed voice they chose did not fit
Yes, I think that's
all.
it. I don't think it's his voice per se. I just think it's how the voice was done.
I don't want to be offensive, but that was very kind of grating. I think that made him more annoying than he even was.
Well, I think it added to his character.
It did.
His name is Fabrizio, and he's played by Francesco Russo. He actually drives the RV. They're actually all traveling to the south of Italy, but it's his RV. And
these people don't know each other. They're
right.
It's
they
like
don't
a ride
know each
share.
other. Yeah, it's like a ride share. He's driving the RV. He's a film student, and he's on his way to visit his family.
Right.
And then you've got Alyssa, who is going to take care of a medical procedure. Then you've got Sophia and Mark, who are so in love and enamored with each other, and their hope is to end up eloping somewhere. And then you've got Ricardo, who's older than Alyssa, Sophia, all of them actually.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a doctor, a little introverted. And he also seems like he's distracted. Something has happened in his past, but he's on his way to go visit his daughter. So they all come together to go on this journey. And then, like you had said, something happens. They end up in the woods. I think it's worth a watch because of all the twists and the turns. They actually include an urban legend in it, and that is actually still popular in Italy today. And I found out looking through this is my fun fact for this film, that it's actually based on something that happened in the 15th century.
Oh, really?
So apparently there's, these three unsavory brothers is what I'll say. So I don't reveal too much about it. And because of them saving the village, the villagers have to pay a price.
Right.
Am I saying this without? Okay. This is the urban legend that Fabrizio tells the people at a certain point in the movie. Well, based on an article on Looper called The Ending of a Classic Horror Story Explained, that was published on July 19th, 2021 by Brute Mondor. The legend that Fabrizio talks about in the film is based on this 15th century story that three brothers were banished from Spain because they murdered their sister's rapist. So they end up off the coast of Favignana near a Sicilian island, and they create a new societal rules, their rules.
Wow.
And three major crime organizations in Italy. And thus these organizations, as we know, the mafia.
Yep. That's really cool. That's a great.
So I think that's
fact.
really, neat, because when you find when you watch the film, some other little things happen.
It's just great. It's filled with little Easter eggs. It's definitely got twists and turns.
Lots of surprises.
Yes, twists and turns.
Like you're like, oh my gosh, I liked it.
I don't know why people didn't like it. Like on the whole, maybe it was the voice of that one character, or they were just confused by everything that was unfolding, because a lot was going on. It was a little hard to, I guess, sift through it all to figure out what was, at the core of the story. However,
there is gore in it though.
Oh, so, yes. It didn't bother me though.
It didn't bother me either. But if anybody's doesn't like a lot of blood or gore or then be prepared.
No, that's one of the strengths of the film is the gore. And like I said, the artsy style of it, like when they go into that cabin, it's very different looking. It's very artistic the way they shoot it while they're in there. And there's these red lights at one point. That's artistic. And that's where I think people compare it to Midsommar and some other things too. But mostly the art style to me reminds me of that movie. But there's so much more to it. It's definitely different. It's not a copy at all. It's so different in story.
Yeah, very different, I think.
Yes. So, overall, I thought it was a decent viewing. Not my favorite, but not my least favorite at all. Not even close. So I think it's worth a watch, like you said.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see our rankings. Now, you had 31 movies and you had to get down to 10. I only had 20.
Well, since you're mentioning the ratings, let's go into them. And I will say, speaking of like you're interested to see, it honestly was hard to get my ratings because I felt like a top 10, you think of a top 10, like, I love these movies. Right. Like, you know, a few on my top 10, I thought were like, these are good, but I didn't like love them. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I was stretching is my point to get to 10. And that sounds so bad, especially when I had so many gems last year. So if we're really comparing Halloween 2020 to Halloween 2021, I think even though I had less movies, I think it doesn't matter because even with the less movies, I couldn't even get 10 that I loved. Whereas last year I could definitely pick 10 that I loved. I know I had more, but still, you'd think with 31, it's still enough to try to pull 10 out of there, but it was hard for me too. And I'm not saying my top 10, I disliked any of them. I'm just saying I didn't have like an intense passion for some of the higher up ones.
Right.
So it was difficult. And Halloween 2020, it was hard to live up to because of all the movies I watched and finding so many rare things that I didn't know would be as good as they were. And this one was enjoyable, but also it came right after our summer slasher marathon, which was such a great marathon. Like looking back on our chats on summer slasher, we did actually watch quite a few movies that we didn't even consider slashers, but we had fun with them. And we had some fun memories of watching them when it comes to like Alone in the Dark, let's say, which they called a slasher, but we were like, no, it's not a slasher, but we still had a good time. So then
you almost wonder what subgenre of horror is our favorite.
It's so hard to know.
I don't know. You see what I'm saying? Like slasher is one of them.
Definitely.
That might be why we enjoyed it so much because the films, and if we look at films that are in our tops and other times we're watching horror movies, what's the effect? I think that's something that is, we need to consider that, even because when we picked our, we were supposed to pick our one favorite marathon we did in the year for our anniversary. I mean, I had 3, my top being Christmas, then my zombie, and then slasher. It's really kind of hard to even say that Christmas was better than slasher or better than zombie. It's because I love the zombie genre. I could watch zombie movies all the time and not get bored with them. Like, oh, that's just another zombie movie. What I loved about my zombie marathon is I had different different zombie movies. So it wasn't like your traditional Night of the Living Dead kind of zombie movie.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's why it's so enjoyable, because you can take that genre of horror and make it so unique and just, I don't know. Same with slashers. I think you can do the same thing with slashers. So I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. I think the films in my Christmas chat that I liked tended to be more on the slasher end of it, so I just think, when you're picking films, again, it goes back to expectation.
Yeah.
What are your expectations for these films? Are you expecting them to hold up to the same feelings you have for Halloween?
Yeah.
I mean, that was what, 1978, and I could watch Halloween all the time.
Me too.
I've watched it over and over and over again.
It's a classic.
And what makes that one not so dated? Like, why do I not notice the dated part of it? Because it is dated just as much as the ones we have seen in this movie marathon. But there's something that works in it. Is it the acting? Is it the,
or the slasher part of it?
Is it the slasher part of it? What is it? So I do think that's something we should kind of really dissect.
Well, I obviously like cheesy. So for some reason, cheesy seems to appeal to me. Slashers, I do think. And I think a new thing that I never expected to love, because I didn't really watch many of them, I do think I like Christmas horror. I think there's something about cold set horror that's really fun. And it's different from normal horror movies. It gives it an extra oomph. And something about like Christmas and horror, at least in last year's marathon, it worked for me. And I'm so excited for the upcoming Christmas marathon. I'm almost more excited for it than our Halloween movie list. Because when I looked at the Halloween movie list, I was excited. But I guess maybe it's after I've watched them all, I was just not as pleased. Maybe that's why I'm saying this. I know I was excited before it happened, but it's just I don't know. it just didn't meet my expectations. Like that's what the theme of this chat should be, expectations. I mean, because that's what we're talking about.
Right.
Does something meet it? Do we have like extreme expectations going in, et cetera, et cetera? So without further ado, here's my top 10. And again, it was kind of difficult to make this because I didn't like love some of these, like that it's 10, 9, 8, but they were good. All right, so number 10, a classic horror story. Not my favorite, but I enjoyed it. I thought the story was clever and good and well done and definitely worth the watch. Number 9, The Stuff. Cheese factor, or like stuff, because cheese and stuff was like goo. And they were eating it. They were eating it in the movie. It's like this goo that people start eating and they start like acting crazy and like don't eat the stuff, essentially, it's kind of like the
moral of the story.
Yeah, the moral of the story, the rule of thumb after watching it. Don't buy into marketing either. Like people like marketing things don't always believe what you see on TV or what you hear people saying about something. It might not always be good for you,
right?
Like it's presented. So I thought that was fun. It was pretty cheesy. Number 8, another cheesy film, but more of a feel-good cheesy film, The Midnight Hour, which was like a made-for-TV special, or like I guess it's a movie, and it like that's the one I told you had LeVar Burton in it. It had a choreographed dance and song, which was really absurd, but it had some heart. It was pretty ridiculous of a story, but I had fun with it and I enjoyed it. And it was like kind of like a feel good. Sometimes you need these little feel good movies in between the darker horror, especially when you're watching it around a holiday. I feel like sometimes the cheesier and lighter and more kid-friendly or family-friendly movies are the ones that are more Halloween-y than even just the horror movies. So sometimes you got to add those in. So that was number 8. Number 7, Scanners, another Cronenberg film. I watched it, you did not, but it was a very Cronenberg marathon for me, as I also had The Brood, like we talked about, and I also watched Nightbreed like you did, which starred David Cronenberg, as we mentioned earlier. So number 6, The Resurrected. And this was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. That's the one with the cut up eye scene. Eyes. But that was a really good movie. Very interesting premise. All right, number 5, All Hallows Eve. Now, this is where like I really did love these movies. I was surprised by All Hallows Eve. I didn't have expectations, really. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. It was good. Very surprising. Number 4, Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Again, didn't really have expectations, didn't think I'd like it, but I ended up loving it for some reason. Number 3, The Brood. I really liked it too. Body horror, creeped me out. I loved it. I don't know why, I just did. It worked for me. Number 2, Silver Bullets. Had such a good time watching it with you. It was a blast. I think that made me love it even more because of the funniness of it, but also it was a good story. And I loved comparing it back to the short novella. So all of it worked. And it had some heart to it at the core as well.
It did. And it had Gary Busey.
It did, and that was fun and funny. All right, and number 1, a movie you didn't have on your list, but it's called We Are Still Here, and it is a cold set horror movie, and it actually did creep me out. Some parts were subtle, but some were in your face. It definitely had gore, good kills at some points, interesting story. It had it all. I wasn't expecting much. I don't know what I expected. I think I found it on a list and didn't know anything about it. I was watching it. It was one of the early viewings too. It was one of my first movies I watched for the marathon. And I think it ruined me because a few of the ones I watched after that were a big disappointment. Like I know I watched We Are Still Here, and then I watched The Black Coat's Daughter, which was one of my big disappointments. And I was like, damn it. So it's hard to follow up a good movie.
That's what I was going to say. It almost sets the bar.
Exactly.
And then you're like, you're thinking, oh my gosh, was this the best that I got? Was the first one that I watched?
So that's the thing. So my number 1 was super early on. And then like afterwards, I mean, I still have like my top 5, a lot of my top 5 I watched closer to the end. So luckily I did finish on a high note, and I added some rewatches that I really loved, which helped like save the marathon and make it even better. But we're mostly talking about just new watches. So this list is my top 10 new watches. If I had to pick my number 1 favorite rewatch, it's Something Wicked This Way Comes for this year. It was awesome. And a close second, Halloween Town. I know we didn't say we were going to rank them, but I just wanted to shout those 2 out. Those were amazing rewatches. And now your list.
Okay, so I went ahead and I made a top 10, but I took out 2 movies that I gave 5 stars, and I just didn't want to put them on the list because they don't compare to the other ones.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's not a fair comparison because of the type of films they are.
So wait, your 5 stars aren't on the top 10?
I do have one that's on there, but what I'm saying is I hated to put these as my first and second top, in my top 10 and knock off other films that I
see.
Because it's like big time apples and oranges.
Okay.
Okay. I enjoyed immensely the Halloween Tree and Halloween Town. Love them. So I didn't put them in my ranking.
I see, because they're family friendly.
They're friendly, they're more Halloween related specifically. I mean, that's one reason why for the Christmas marathon, I do horror and I do my classic.
And you don't mix the top
I don't like to
lists.
mix them together because it's too hard to, have almost like a kid film up against a film,
you can't compare Home Alone with Christmas Evil. You really can't.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
It is. So that was my thing with this. But I didn't want anybody to think, oh my God, she didn't even mention Halloween Tree or Halloween Town, and she talks so fondly about it in,
So you're just doing plain horror, like adult horror.
Yes. So anyway, I just want that to be noted that I absolutely adored the Halloween Tree and Halloween Town. But
noted.
They're on their own little private island.
That makes sense.
Of awesome gems in movie watching. Okay, so my number 10 was The Brood. I know you're surprised by that.
Well, I mean, at least it made the top 10, so yes, I'm not worried.
It did. So, and I have to say, I chose The Brood over Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I liked them, but I think The Brood to me was more horror. It was scarier. Horror. Yeah, just like disturbing more so in the sense of grossness and gore and all that kind of stuff.
Agreed.
Number 9, House on Haunted Hill, which it's like campy horror, but I just liked it. It was a black and white film, 1959. It had Vincent Price in it. I think also the fact that I was in a play that was based on it, made it a little more exciting as well. It was just surprising that a movie like that, I mean, different. I don't know if you would like it so much because it has that kind of campiness to it. And it's black and white, but you would have to watch it to see. And it's not a very long movie at all. It's only 75 minutes, which is unusual. But I just like the premise of it. It's really good. It's like it's got a mystery to it, in addition to it. And it's kind of fun just to see how a horror movie back in that time with Vincent Price, so
Vincent Price, I mean, he's incredible.
So I enjoyed it. Number 8, Nightbreed.
Oh, it made your top 10?
It did make my top 10 because even though I had some issues after seeing Cabal, I really did like the story. It's an unconventional love story. I've talked about that before.
I just didn't include it because I didn't include my rewatches in this, so I didn't include it.
Mine are like both. I didn't know
fine.
That we were doing. Well, I only had 2 rewatches.
Well, it made the ranking easier for me. If I had to put rewatches in, I would have probably ranked like all my top ones as rewatches. Right. I like a lot of the movies I rewatch.
Well, as you can see, Nightbreed made it on there.
Yeah.
So number 7 was Aftermath. You didn't watch Aftermath, but I would recommend it to you to watch because it is part of the movie is based on a true story. And just recently I watched an episode of The Walking Dead, and the other part of Aftermath, there's similarities in this really stressful, scary episode of The Walking Dead that I was like, the minute I saw this, I'm like, oh my God, that takes me back to Aftermath. But I liked it because, knowing that it was also part of it was based on a true story, made it kind of fascinating to me. And just the premise of the story was good. Creepy. Number 6, The Houses October Built. I enjoyed this one as well. It's considered a found footage type movie. I also like that they actually have real footage of people who are going to haunted houses, because that's what the premise is. It's this group of people want to go to like the most amazing haunted house, the scariest ones, kind of thing. So things happen on it. So I thought it was super creepy. But I liked the aspect of also having real people, like the interviewing real people, in it. Yeah. So number 5, A Classic Horror Story. I liked it.
It's pretty high up there.
Yeah. 4 is 1922. I liked it very much. Like I said, some of these I had problems because I had a lot of 4 stars, a lot of 3 stars. My 5 stars was Halloween Tree and Halloween Town, so, and one more. But number 3, All Hallows Eve. I really did. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah, me too.
And then number 2, Creep.
Oh, geez. I knew you liked it more, so I knew it would be on your list.
I really enjoyed it. I really did. I really liked it. I mean, and the fact that I liked the character Joseph, even though he's so creepy. What does that say about myself? I don't know. He was kind of likable.
You would have been taken in. You would have been in trouble.
Yes, I would have been in trouble, obviously. It would have been too late, like Aaron.
Yeah.
Number 1, dun, 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 Silver Bullet.
Like it was number 2 for me, so that's pretty close there in the rankings.
I mean, and it was a rewatch for me, but I absolutely adore.
So was that the 5-star, the third 5-star? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
I know.
So what was Creep? A 4.5 or 4-star? Or
actually, it was 4.
Oh, it was 4. Okay.
All Hallows Eve was 4. I mean, it's kind of hard. I'm just terrible with star ratings. And
it is hard. I mean, it's even hard for books. I mean, I made myself write a review for every book that I've read this year. The review part's not as bad, but like the having to put a star rating, I'm like, sometimes like, I just don't know. Like, I just don't know. It's hard, especially when you read middle grade and like, you really enjoy it and it's fun, but it's also like, not the greatest. It's all difficult.
Right.
It's hard.
And sometimes I change my star ratings after I do my whole entire marathon, because what'll happen is I'll watch a movie and I'm like, oh, I think that's 4 stars. And then I'll watch another movie that I like better than that. And I might have given that one a 3-star. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't give that a 3-star if I like it more than this one I gave a 4-star. So then I kind of think about it. And it's like, I really wish I knew what the stars meant. Like,
well, I think you define what the stars mean. Like, you can come up with your criteria and like use that to rank all your movies. Like a 3, like for me, I kind of do that for movies. It's easier for me to rank movies than books personally, or rate in terms of star ratings. I would say that, a 5-star is a ultimate classic, very favorite. Watch it. There's no limit to how many times you'd rewatch it. Mm-hmm. You could watch it anytime and enjoy it. 4.5 to 4, really enjoyed it. Also would rewatch, but it's not like one of your all-time favorites. It's just like it was super good and you would rewatch. 3 to 3.5, I would say you liked it, but you wouldn't necessarily ever need to rewatch it. For instance, Terrifier, I believe back when we chatted about that, I might have given it a 3.5 star, meaning I liked it, but I don't think I ever need to rewatch it. Mm-hmm. I'd be okay if I never rewatched it, but I'm glad that I did watch it. And I thought it had things that made it a good movie. It's just that, once is enough for that one. Right. I don't know. Whereas somebody might rate it a 5-star if they want to watch it all the time, if it's one of their favorite slashers, if it's one of their favorite movie villains, if it's like a new discovery for them, that it's going to be like a new classic for them perhaps. So see the difference there? It's about personal preference. So you can define what, like, to you, 4 might mean, it's good, but I never want to rewatch it. 5 might mean the rewatch thing. It's all up to you. Mm-hmm. See, 4 and 5s to me are rewatch territory. Anything below, I would be like, once is enough.
I'd say that because I would rewatch. I mean, if Creep is a 4, All Hallows Eve is a 4, I would watch those again.
Exactly. But but they're not your ultimate class, like your ultimate favorites, but you would, revisit them. Mm-hmm. Essentially, that's what I think 4 territory would mean.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes sense. But again, it's your criteria, your own criteria.
Right. So anyway, that's what I thought about my movies. It was kind of hard in a way because, like I said, I think we were spoiled with, at least I was. I felt like we had Halloween and then Christmas of 2020, and those were both successful marathons. I loved what I picked. Having a marathon, doing the Halloween marathon was my very first time ever having a marathon like that. Right. So, I picked probably movies that I knew were going to be a sure thing, first time doing it because we didn't know we were going to do anything beyond that. Right. So that was like, I thought maybe like a one and done kind of thing. But I really enjoyed my Christmas, and then the musicals, I had a ball with that as well. And then we went into that long holiday one, which I wouldn't say was my most favorite. It was, there were some things that I enjoyed about it. But
I mean, because you had Leprechaun in the Hood and Rotten Tail in the same marathon. However, I do think there were some gems that I know for sure you loved, like My Bloody Valentine, Terror Train, and I personally had some great Easter stuff. Like you had already seen, what was it called? Dead Snow?
Yes.
And
Dead
that
Snow was awesome.
It was wonderful. So I had that. I had Night of the Lepus, which was funny, haha, like ridiculous, like totally bad, Troll 2 level, but it was entertaining. So there was a lot that I think it was one of the lower marathons, but it was only because we stretched it out so long and it didn't feel like a real marathon.
Yes. And then, going into zombies for me, which is one of my favorite genres of horror. And then slashers was so successful. So then we coming into this. And I think part of this one is I gave some new movies a try. I only had 2 rewatches out of all 20 of my films. So, you take a gamble. You do. When you are trying new movies out, and especially if you're trying new movies out and they're not necessarily recommended to you. So,
but also, there's only so much good new movies you can discover, like that you've never seen before. Like like I'm worried, like, are we going to run out of good horror movies to discover? I hope not. There's got to be more out there. And I'm not saying this was terrible. I'm just saying I feel like we didn't have as many gems as last year, for instance. And maybe we have to, start looking for more Halloween-y things as well. Maybe we should put that theme in there because a lot of them were just random horror.
Right.
Like, is that good to do, or should we try to be more specific? But once you get more specific, then your pool of movies is so small.
Yes, much smaller.
I mean, I don't even think it's really doable because there's not that many Halloween set movies.
Right.
So, I don't know. We'll have to think about it next year in terms of really planning and really making sure we either let ourselves rewatch some more things or research more of the new movies. We'll see.
Well, and I think also too, for this movie marathon, we had more movies that we didn't agree on.
We did.
Than in the past. We might come upon 1 or 2 that were like, oh, no.
Well, you got to remember, we had more movies in common for this marathon, almost more than any other marathon, besides like our slasher.
So the fact that we had as many in common, but we didn't agree on them is highly unusual.
It is.
So that's pretty interesting too. So I don't know.
Overall, it was fun, but it motivates me to even be better next year, to have some better picks, to research more. And overall, it's always a fun time because I get to do it with you, and we get to have these analytical chats where we break it down. How many people do this type of thing where they really take a deep dive into what they watched? They might watch it and then maybe think about it once or twice, but then, eventually just let it go. We're like using it for something more, and we're documenting it for ourselves, even for later to come back and, oh yeah, I remember that viewing experience. Oh yeah, I remember that time I told Kat to watch session 9 and she hated it. It's a fun memory. You know what I mean? We could always have that in that discussion that we had about it. Oh yeah, I remember Driller Killer, but the conversation makes it not a waste of time because it was funny to discuss together.
Yes.
So I think the convos add as much to it as the movies do.
I agree 100% with that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for doing this with me, Kat. And as we wrap up, I just want to plug, I know I already plugged our part 1 of this chat, of this movie wrap up, but I do want to plug our anniversary chat, which was a stream. And yes, it was long, just like this video is going to be, but it was long, about 3 hours long, but it was so fun and funny. And we literally rank our top 25 movies out of like hundreds of movies. So I had a pool of 164 movies that I had to pick a top 25 out of. Kat had a pool of 102 movies. I mean, if you want to know what our top 25 are, go and watch that. And also our bottom 5. I think it's worth it for those categories alone, but we also talk about scariest films, like actual scary and creepy horror movies. We talk about a lot. And we also kind of give our numbers of certain words that we've said over our chats, and it makes us seem really vulgar, but it is very funny. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm so glad we had that chat. I think it was one of our best, even though I say that every time. But yeah, guys, please check it out. I will link it down below. And for this chat, though, that's it for us, right, Kat?
That's it. So happy you joined us for this time.
Also, by the way, since we're planning future marathons, if you have any Christmas horror movie recommendations or any horror movie recommendations maybe for next Halloween or a future marathon, drop them below in the comments. We always want to hear what you guys have to say, and we'll take a look at the movie and we may add it. You never know.
Yes, we appreciate.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care. And until next time, keep on killing it. Bye.
Bye.